This girl went to the hospital to see a doctor. Unexpectedly, while walking, she accidentally bumped into a doctor. Because she was unsteady on her feet, the girl almost fell. Luckily, the doctor caught her in time. When the girl raised her head, she saw a handsome man like an angel, but the doctor just smiled and immediately left. The girl did not know that this doctor would save her life. After she entered the examination room, the doctor said that she had a malignant myeloma. According to the doctor's observation, it seemed to be a multifocal tumor. Now the symptoms of the disease are headaches and vomiting, and the body will be in pain. The doctor hopes that Dongjung can do a biopsy to determine her exact condition. Dongjung immediately asked the biopsy could be done on the weekend. After receiving the answer of no, she decided to give up. Dongjung went to the hospital today. She had used up all her vacation days in several years. Dongjung no longer had any days off. The doctor was surprised and told Dongjung that if she had the surgery, she could live another year. If Dongjung didn't have the surgery, Dongjung would only live for 3 to 4 months. Furthermore, her condition would worsen after that. Dongjung would be paralyzed on one side and have speech problems. Hearing that, Dongjung nodded. Then Dongjung took out the blueprint and told the doctor that she had uploaded and promoted this document to their column. No matter how busy the doctor was, Dongjung still hoped that the doctor would continue to upload it until episode 70. Dongjung hoped that the doctor would quickly complete the manuscript. Then Dongjung politely said goodbye to the doctor. At this time, the doctor that Dongjung accidentally bumped into came to an empty hospital bed. He counted down to 5 seconds. After finishing, countless patients suddenly entered the hospital. This afternoon, the Seoul area discovered a murder case that left 7 people seriously injured. The person lying on the hospital bed is the suspect. The nurse saw that the handsome doctor was not wearing a badge, so she wondered and asked which hospital he belonged to. The doctor stared at the nurse. Immediately, the nurse was hypnotized. The handsome doctor came in front of the patient and told the patient to open his eyes now. After hearing this, the patient suddenly woke up. Normally, he hated most people who caused chaos in his area. Destroying was his right. But now this person dared to steal his job. Now he had to temporarily revoke this person's death. The wound on the patient's neck quickly closed. Something entered the patient's body. Next, the doctor would let him know that in this world, the thing more terrifying than death was life. Then he walked out. He went to the hospital rooftop and met a mysterious girl. The girl compared this world to a flower garden. She herself was the gardener. As for Mealmon, a destroyer standing in front of her was the butterfly in the bee flower garden. He was really confused. He had been working without rest for so many years. When would he be able to stop? The girl told him that when he became someone's hope or became a real person, it would be time for him to rest. On this side, Dongjung's boyfriend wanted to break up with her. Now she had become the third person for no reason. The other party's wife came to Dongjung and scolded her. When Dongjung returned to the publishing house, the director continued to bully her. Dongjung had been working without rest for many days. She couldn't stand it anymore, so she grabbed her bag and left work. The photo of Dongjung and his wife arguing in the coffee shop was posted online. Friends began to attack Dongjung. When Dongjung was sad and wondering why he was so unlucky, the girl next to him suddenly sent Dongjung a message. The girl told Dongjung that the man in the blue shirt in front of him was the one who specialized in secretly taking pictures of girls. Dongjung immediately chased after him. When he ran to the main road, the man fell into a hole in the middle of the road. It turned out that wherever the destroyer went, that place would be extremely unlucky. At this time, Dongjung was walking on the street. It was pouring rain, and Dongjung was the only one without an umbrella. Dongjung's younger brother, Tak Sunjung, called to ask her for money. Dongjung went to the cake shop alone and bought a cake. Today was Dongjung's birthday, but no one remembered. Dongjung would die in 3 months. Her job was about to end, and her family didn't care. Even though she was in such a situation, Dongjung couldn't cry out loud. Dongjung's parents passed away early. Dongjung and Tak Sunjung depended on each other to survive. Dongjung drank some wine and went to the rooftop. Dongjung saw many shooting stars flying across the sky. She shouted loudly to tell the sky her wish. Dongjung wanted to destroy this world, destroy it all, bring destruction here to her. At this time, the doctor was in the house, and suddenly he heard Dongjung's prayer. He felt that this girl was very special. The doorbell suddenly rang. Dongjung tried to open her eyes. She was dazed, trying to see who it was. Suddenly Dongjung saw a scene abroad through the door. Dongjung felt that she had drunk too much wine. Dongjung was suspicious and opened the door to find the destroyer had appeared in front of her house. The destroyer greeted Dongjung and said that he was just joking just now. He just wanted her to open the door quickly. Dongjung suddenly remembered. This person was the person she saw in the hospital this morning. Dongjung asked him why he came to find her. The destroyer said because Dongjung called him just now. Then he went straight into Dongjung's house. The destroyer felt a little strange. The destroyer asked if there was a cake on the table. Was she having a party? Today was also his birthday. Dongjung heard that and wished him a happy birthday. The destroyer felt very happy. Since he grew up, this was the first time he had received a human's congratulations. Dongjung was about to call the police when she discovered that her phone was out of battery. The destroyer told Dongjung to sit down. He said, "Didn't Dongjung just wish for the world to be destroyed?" Dongjung immediately scolded him for being crazy. Dongjung was about to leave the house when he discovered that the door had automatically locked. Dongjung started to panic. Dongjung asked what he wanted in the end. The destroyer said that Dongjung would die within the next 100 days. He drew a circle on the calendar. Seeing the situation before his eyes, Dongjung panicked, not knowing whether the tumor had taken effect or not. Dongjung had hallucinations. The destroyer saw this and immediately guessed that Dongjung needed time to calm down. He gently walked out of Dongjung's house. He told him to see Dongjung later. After saying that, the destroyer immediately returned to his villa and counted down to 321. Dongjung suddenly appeared in his house. It turned out that the destroyer had entered Dongjung's dream. Dongjung didn't want to believe in the present. Dongjung was about to open the door and run away when she discovered that outside the door was an endless city. If she didn't like this city, the destroyer would take her to the beach. With the current situation, Dongjung believed that the person in front of her was the destroyer. Dongjung didn't understand why the destroyer was looking for her at this time. The destroyer was also in a difficult position. He had to pray to humans. Only then could he do it, and he was very interested in Dongjung's prayer. While the two were talking, the bell suddenly rang. A snap of her fingers woke Dongjung up. Dongjung felt lucky that it was just a dream, but Dongjung discovered that there were many footprints on the carpet in the house. It turned out that the man from last night had really appeared. When Dongjung was about to get on the subway to go to work, she discovered that the destroyer had appeared next to her. It turned out that it wasn't all a dream. Dongjung was going to buy sushi for breakfast. The destroyer disguised himself as an employee. Dongjung didn't want to pay attention to him, so she immediately got on the train. The subway was full of people, making her feel uncomfortable, so she thought that she wished everyone would disappear. The lights suddenly went out. Everyone suddenly disappeared, leaving only Dongjung and the destroyer. The destroyer looked at Dongjung and smiled. He said, "See, you wish for that too." While Dongjung was still in shock, the lights flashed again. When the lights came back on, everything was back to normal. Dongjung arrived at work and her co-worker told her that the author she had made an appointment with had arrived, and the person who appeared in front of her was the Terminator. The Terminator told her that a few days ago she didn't feel that this author was very annoying, so the Terminator sent him abroad. With the ability of the Terminator, he could hear everyone's thoughts, but after signing a contract with a human, he couldn't read the minds of the person who signed the contract with him. Dongjung couldn't stand it anymore. Dongjung ran out of the company. She was about to call her sister to complain that everything was ridiculous when she found the Terminator on the opposite side of the road. He stared at her. While Dongjung was thinking, she decided to cross the street. The tumor in Dongjung's head suddenly flared up and she fell down in pain. The red light was also on at this time, and a large truck was about to rush towards Dongjung. In the dangerous situation, everything around Dongjung stopped. Only the destroyer could move in this space. The destroyer gradually walked in front of Dongjung. He asked Dongjung if she wanted to hold his hand here or if she chose to leave. At the moment, Dongjung held the destroyer's hand. The pact between her and him was officially established. The two went to the cafe. Until now, Dongjung still couldn't believe the situation in front of him. Dongjung asked him if he was really the destroyer. Seeing that Dongjung was doubting him, he immediately showed off his ability. In the blink of an eye, he was able to turn off all the electricity in the cafe. Dongjung thought it might be a coincidence. The destroyer was not convinced, so he turned off the power on all the phones again. This time, Dongjung felt that he was just someone who could control the electric current. Seeing that the girl in front of him was difficult to convince, the destroyer proved it with great ability. Suddenly, countless meteors appeared in the sky, about to hit the earth. Dongjung saw this scene and believed what he said. Dongjung begged the destroyer to stop right now. Suddenly, the meteor turned into colorful smoke, and then it disappeared in the sky. The electricity in the cafe was also restored. The destroyer reminded Dongjung that now that the two of them had signed a contract, she must always remember that he was not a good person. He was about to turn around and leave when Dongjung grabbed his hand. The destroyer put a red string on Dongjung's hand, which could restrain the tumor in her brain. It would make her not feel any pain, but this one had to be charged before 12 o'clock once a day. Dongjung had to change to another string. He said that the way to pay was for the two of them to hold hands once a day, which was how the destroyer controlled her. The destroyer entered the prison. When no one was around, the prisoner was about to tie a rope around his neck to end his own life when the prison door opened automatically and the rope was cut. The destroyer had already reminded the criminal. He told the criminal not to cause trouble in his territory. Destruction was his right. The prisoner couldn't stand it. Now, he couldn't sleep every day, and his ears were filled with the resentment of countless people. The destroyer felt it was ridiculous, but that was just what the prisoner had to go through every day, and he couldn't couldn't stand it. Some time ago, out of the 3 people he had murdered, 2 had yet to regain consciousness. This was the karma this criminal had created. At this moment, he went to the hospital to see Sun Yo-shin. The day before, he told Sun Yo-shin that she wasn't born because of human desires. Now he had found an interesting person whose wish was to destroy the world. The wishes he heard every day were to win the lottery, or to have a healthy and happy body. All of them made him feel bored. Sun Yo-shin reminded him that this world was a flower garden. At this time, Dong-jung received a call from a colleague informing him that her ex-boyfriend was now at the editorial office. Ever since Dong-jung dumped her, this ex-boyfriend started to come to her workplace and scream and make a scene. Now he not only lost Dong-jung, even his wife wanted to divorce him. Dong-jung returned to work. Her ex-boyfriend started to go crazy. He didn't understand what Dong-jung and his wife had said. Now his wife wanted to divorce him, but Dong-jung was the one who felt wronged. When they first dated, Dong-jung didn't know that he was a married man. Dong-jung was deceived by him. She didn't do anything wrong. Dong-jung said all these words to his wife. Dong-jung really didn't understand her ex-boyfriend. Even if they broke up now, they should still be polite. Dong-jung secretly thought to herself, should she wish for this bastard to disappear from this world now? But Dong-jung thought again, if her wish was used on this kind of person, it would be a pity. At this time, his wife had dragged him out of here. The workplace was in chaos. Dong-jung's mood was extremely bad. Dong-jung was also terminally ill at this time. She only had 100 days left to live. Dong-jung wrote a resignation letter and gave it to the head of the department. Ju Wang told Dong-jung that the company's representative had already arrived in Paris. She had to wait until the representative returned home before she could submit her resignation letter. When Dong-jung got off work, she was about to run a red light when she suddenly remembered the scene from this morning. When the truck approached Dong-jung, she couldn't help but stand still. Dong-jung was hesitating when the destroyer suddenly appeared. He grabbed her hand and told her it was time to charge the battery. He asked Dong-jung why she didn't dare to cross the street. If she was afraid in the future, she could always call him. Dong-jung could do whatever she wanted. He was by her side because she had said her wish to destroy the world. As long as her wish was fulfilled, his mission would end. Dong-jung said, what would be the consequences if she wanted to cancel the contract? The destroyer was a little angry when he heard that. He told her that if she did, someone would die instead of her. That person would be the person she loved the most. The destruction inside her would be transferred to another place. That was the trade-off. Every agreement has a loss when it is cancelled. This is the power of the contract. He snapped his fingers, and the truck from this morning appeared before his eyes again. The truck was preparing to drive towards Dong-jung. When the truck was rushing towards Dong-jung, she closed her eyes and told him not to continue. Everything disappeared in the blink of an eye. This was the result of breaking the contract. Dong-jung was angry. She went to slap him. The destroyer was very cold. He encountered this every day. He left there alone and returned to his residence. He stared blankly at the lighter in his hand. He remembered what Dong-jung said earlier. Why her? He once asked Sun Yo-shin that question. The answer he received was fate. It turned out that fate was so cruel to everyone. At this time, Dong-jung returned home. She looked at the circle on the calendar. Now it was time to count down to the day she left. At this time, Tak-sun-jung came to her house. He bought her a lot of things. Dong-jung said nothing but hugged Tak-sun-jung tightly. Her parents passed away. In this world she only had Tak-sun-jung as a relative. Then Dong-jung went to the photo studio. When Dong-jung was smiling, the Terminator appeared in front of her. After Dong-jung took the photo, she told the staff to help her print the photo into a black frame. Then Dong-jung hugged her portrait and walked with the Terminator on the Hangang River Bridge. The Terminator reached out. It was time to charge the battery again. When he held Dong-jung's hand, the street lights suddenly went out. Dong-jung felt strange, so she asked if the Terminator did this, but the Terminator explained that he didn't. At this time, there were many ambulances passing by on the bridge. The screen in the distance showed that last night in the Seoul area, there were 18 traffic accidents that killed 2 people. That's right, the Terminator's appearance caused the accident. Every road he walked, every move he made, even every time he breathed, all of those things would cause the events around him to have an accident. His existence was like that. Dong-jung asked him what would happen if he did nothing. The destroyer recalled. He had thought the same thing, but the truth was not as expected. From that moment on, heat waves and droughts would appear everywhere, and many people would have accidents. At this time, Dong-jung understood that the world has gains and losses. That is the law of the world. Then the destroyer sent Dong-jung home. At this time, Dong-jung's ex-boyfriend appeared again. He was drunk and started to make a mess. He knelt before Dong-jung. Then he said that it was all his fault. He wanted to start over with Dong-jung. While the two were pulling, Dong-jung's photo fell to the ground. The destroyer couldn't stand by and watch any longer. He grabbed Dong-jung's ex-lover by the collar. Then the destroyer asked Dong-jung if he needed this guy to disappear. Dong-jung didn't want to waste his wish on this bastard. Seeing that, the destroyer immediately came up with an idea. He called Dong-jung his wife and said he would handle this place. Now, Dongjung go home and make his favorite cold cucumber soup. Hearing that, the ex-boyfriend immediately became agitated. He thought Dongjung was also too timing. Then he and Dongjung were truly a match made in heaven. He was a married man, and she was an adulterer. Taksunjung suddenly appeared. Taksunjung took a wooden stick and taught that bastard a lesson. Dongjung was picking up the broken glass on the photo when she accidentally cut her hand. The destroyer helped her heal her wound. The two had promised that the destroyer would not let Dongjung feel any pain. The destroyer did so because in this world, Dongjung was the only person who thought like him. He was truly grateful to her. At this moment, the destroyer turned around and left. Dongjung suddenly called him back. She said, "Let's be together now." At this moment, the destroyer's lips curled up slightly. How will the fateful things between Dongjung and the destroyer unfold? When the two live together, how will their mysterious and romantic love develop? At this moment, Dongjung returned home and looked at herself in the mirror, thinking that she was crazy. Why did she say she wanted to be with the destroyer just now? What was she doing? Dongjung finished washing her face and comforted herself that losing face was just a passing thing. She should still tell the destroyer about her decision to cancel the contract. When Dongjun was about to open the door, she discovered that her house was connected to the destroyer's villa. Seeing the scene before her eyes, Dongjun suddenly burst out laughing. Dongjun also didn't know which subway line the destroyer's house was on and which line she should take. The destroyer felt strange. He didn't understand why Dongjun suddenly invited him to live together. Did she like him? Dongjun immediately denied it and said that the destroyer had told her to cling to him. This was her fate. When he turned to leave, Dongjun suddenly had a strange thought. Dongjun was very afraid that the destroyer would disappear, so she blurted out that now Dongjun had a terminal illness and only had 100 days left to live, and every day she had to ask him to help her ease the pain. Then, Dongjun asked where the destroyer's dining room was and where the destroyer's bedroom was. The destroyer said he didn't eat or sleep. Hearing that, Dongjun was very surprised. Unexpectedly, Dongjun immediately opened the living room door. Dongjun discovered that even if she changed rooms, she would still meet the destroyer. At this moment, Dongjun suddenly heard Tak Sunjung's call. It turns out that this is just a connection in space and time. The real location has not changed. When Dongjun opened the door, Tak Sunjung was already sitting on the terrace. Tak Sunjung told her sister that the married man who had just bullied her had been taught a lesson by Tak Sunjung. Tak Sunjung also told her sister some good news. When Tak Sunjung was chasing her ex-boyfriend with a wooden stick, he ran out onto the main road and was hit by a car. His life is now in danger. He will probably be bedridden for months. The ex-boyfriend had been dealt with earlier. Now it was the destroyer's turn. Tak Sunjung held a slipper and was about to enter the room to find the destroyer. The sister next to him quickly stopped him. When Tak Sunjung opened Dongjung's room door, he found the destroyer lying on Dongjung's bed. The destroyer even greeted Tak Sunjung. The destroyer also called Dongjung his beloved wife. The destroyer declared that he was now Dongjung's husband. Tak Sunjung didn't expect that she was still single and living so comfortably. Dongjung even dared to bring a man home. Seeing that the person in front of him seemed calm, Tak Sunjung thought that the destroyer seemed rich. Tak Sunjung immediately told Dongjung to go to the convenience store to buy some beer to bring back. Men have to drink beer to know their temperament. How could handsome men really pay attention to Tak Sunjung's sister? The destroyer must be a liar. The two men drank a few cans of beer. The destroyer remained calm while Tak Sunjung started talking nonsense. The destroyer cheered Tak Sunjung on. If Tak Sunjung was tired, he didn't need to pretend to be happy. He could be more comfortable. This sentence really touched Tak Sunjung. He held the destroyer's hand and said in a pleading tone, "In the future, the destroyer must take good care of his sister." Tak Sunjung also said that it was getting late, so it was time for him to go home. Tak Sunjung also told her sister to perform well tonight. Dongjung was arranging the food. When she turned around, she found that her house was connected to the destroyer's lobby. The destroyer told her that now that the two of them were together, the space connection would happen every day. The destroyer reminded Dongjung that Tak Sunjung was the person she cared about the most. If Dongjung wanted to cancel the deal with the destroyer, Tak Sunjung would die. Hearing that, Dongjung immediately got angry and took the blanket from her room to sleep on the sofa. Dongjung wanted to prevent the destroyer from doing anything to her family. She had to keep an eye on him at all times. Dongjung curiously asked the destroyer, did he really want to destroy the world? The next day, the destroyer drew 4 crosses on the calendar. He reminded Dongjung to start counting down to the day she died. Dongjung took out her diary and began to rewrite the content of the agreement between her and the Terminator. First, before Dongjung died, the Terminator would make her feel no more pain. Every day at 12 o'clock, the Terminator would hold her hand once. They did this to gain strength, and in these 100 days, the Terminator would help Dongjung fulfill her most important wish. If Dongjung broke the agreement, the person she loved the most would die. While Dongjung was in a meeting with department head Ju Won in the the office, she discovered that the computer was automatically typing. It turned out that the Terminator was talking to Dong-gung. He said that he had taken care of the heating system in her house. He used the ATM to tell Dong-gung that the gas in the house was a bit expensive. On the food menu, he also told Dong-jung that he had intended to turn off the gas, but found that the screen kept jumping numbers. Being teased by the Terminator all day long made Dong-jung extremely angry. She even had to run home during lunch break. Dong-jung found that the Terminator was not there. He left Dong-jung a piece of paper on which was written, "The time is off." It turned out that the Terminator was still teasing her. At this time, the Terminator transformed into a doctor. He told the girl in front of him that she was seriously ill. She only had 3 months to live. Hearing that, the patient immediately begged the doctor for help. She cried very painfully. Seeing the girl in front of him in such pain, the Terminator found it very confusing, because usually when people were about to leave the world, they would ask the doctor to help them continue living. But when Dong-jung heard that she was sick, she did not react. The Terminator snapped his fingers, and the girl in front of him regained consciousness. It turned out that what had just happened was just an experiment by the Terminator. At this time, Dong-jung went to attend the farewell ceremony of a relative of the author she had worked with before. When stopping at the funeral home, suddenly a girl in red bumped into Dong-jung. After that collision, Dong-jung suddenly saw the image of the destroyer in her mind. Dong-jung realized that she had met the destroyer before. The girl in red sat down next to him and started chatting with Dong-jung. When the girl in red was about to look at the red string that the destroyer was wearing on Dong-jung's hand, the destroyer appeared in time and pulled Dong-jung away. Dong-jung said that she had seen him at a funeral. At that time, the destroyer cried very sadly. Who was the dead person at that time? The destroyer said that if he didn't eat or sleep, he wouldn't feel heartache and wouldn't see anyone pitiful, but it turned out to be all lies. Didn't he cry very sadly at that time? The destroyer immediately denied it, and Sun Yo-shin also quietly left. The two returned home. The destroyer reminded Dong-jung not to casually show that string to others. It would become her weakness. Dong-jung felt strange. The destroyer's behavior had always been very unusual. Could it be that he liked her? Seeing that the destroyer did not react, Dong-jung said that it was almost 12 o'clock. It was time for them to hold hands to gain strength. Dong-jung took his hand. Dong-jung went to him and asked if he did not miss her. Seeing that he did not react, Dong-jung wanted to confirm if he had fallen asleep. The destroyer suddenly let go. He said he would not sleep. When Dong-jung was not on guard, the destroyer was always awake. He lived like that. The destroyer looked at her at such a close distance, so Dong-jung felt a little moved by the current situation. The next day, the destroyer was preparing to drive out when Sun Yo-shin appeared in his car again. Sun Yo-shin said that the Terminator had lived in this world for a long time. Now suddenly, a girl named Dong-jung remembered him. His behavior became more and more strange. Sun Yo-shin told him to enjoy the upcoming trip. At this time, Dong-jung went to work. She discovered that the Terminator had turned into the company boss. He followed her all day. While working, the two talked about what happened after the girl in red bumped into Dong-jung in the funeral home. Dong-jung suddenly remembered the memories related to the Terminator. The Terminator remembered that Sun Yo-shin had told him that he would destroy the world, and she would also have a corresponding way to deal with it. At this time, the Terminator ran to the hospital in anger. He asked Sun Yo-shin why he did that. Sun Yo-shin told him that Yo-shin only wanted Dong-jung to remember the memories related to her. Before that, the Terminator had said that he would have no mercy on humans. By then, will he be able to see Dong-jung leave in front of him? The destroyer said that it was all Dong-jung's fate. This conversation between the two ended unhappily. The destroyer went to Dong-jung's rooftop. He told Dong-jung that he also remembered seeing her at the funeral home that day. Dong-jung's biological parents passed away. Everyone was crying. Only she was smiling. He warned Dong-jung that he was the destroyer. He would not let her laugh anymore. It was almost 12 o'clock now. He would not hold her hand anymore. He would let her truly feel the pain when death approached. At exactly 12 o'clock, Dong-jung had a severe headache. Dong-jung fell to the ground in pain. She begged the destroyer to hold her hand. The destroyer told Dong-jung that now she could wish for the pain to disappear. Even so, Dong-jung still refused to wish. She just stared at him. The Terminator couldn't take it anymore. He still held Dong-jung's hand. Suddenly, Dong-jung woke up. He reminded Dong-jung that this rope would become Dong-jung's weak point. He hoped she would always remember this. He said he was not human. That was his decision since he was born. At this moment, Dong-jung stood on the rooftop. If the Terminator wanted to destroy the world, her plan was to commit suicide. When Dong-jung was about to jump down, the Terminator grabbed her hand. Then he hugged her. Dong-jung had already realized that the Terminator was just pretending to hide. Dong-jung knew for sure that he would hold her. Didn't he say that he didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't cry, didn't have mercy, didn't love, and wasn't human? But Dong-jung was human. Starting from now on, Dong-jung would love him, because in these 100 days, the wish she wrote was for the Terminator to become the person she loved. That's it. When the pact is broken, Dongjung won't lose anything. The destroyer hugged Dongjung tightly. If he said so, then do it. Love him. How will their troubled love continue? He will definitely make Dongjung wish for the world to disappear for him. He asked if she needed a kiss now. Hearing that, Dongjung angrily pushed him away. Dongjung said that today she would remember everything he did for her. Dongjung told him to quickly go inside and not run away. Dongjung took the blanket from the room and spread it on the floor. She said that he should come to sleep with her now. At least they could lie next to each other. The destroyer still didn't understand what Dongjung was doing. Dongjung was just a small person, but she always acted strong in front of him. The destroyer was provoked. He opened the door, then he pressed Dongjung against the wall. He said that if Dongjung wanted to go in, she shouldn't regret it later. The two of them just lay down on the bed. Dongjung said that she was on the rooftop just now. If the destroyer didn't grab her, she would have really lost her life. The destroyer's expression when he looked at her at that time was both scary and cold, but even so, she still believed in her feelings. Dongjung believed that she could change the destroyer. Then she fell asleep next to him. The destroyer lay beside her, staring at Donggyo. He was about to reach out to touch Dongyung's face when he suddenly remembered what Sun Yoshin had said to him. Sun Yoshin said that now, weren't he in contact with humans? By then, he would definitely have sympathy and other emotions. He would definitely change. He left the room angrily. He wandered on the main road. He could hear everyone's thoughts. He laughed mockingly. How could he have that kind of feeling? Humans are so funny. He definitely won't change. At this moment, Dongjung woke up. She found that the destroyer had left. Dongjung immediately went to work. Dongjung searched online for ways to make the other person fall in love quickly, but couldn't find any effective ways. After work, Dongjung took the subway home. The crowd almost knocked her over. The destroyer suddenly appeared and held Dongjung, saying that now was the time to hold hands to recharge. Up until now, the destroyer had pretended that nothing had happened. He had always been good to Dongjung. Dongjung really didn't understand what he wanted. The destroyer suddenly disappeared. Then he suddenly appeared again. He told Dongjung what he had experienced today. He had heard everyone's wishes. He understood clearly. He didn't believe Dongjung could do it. He would definitely make her give up. Dongjung didn't care. Dongjung went back to her room. She started watching a fantasy romance movie. Dongjung was practicing how to make herself fall in love with a special existence. She invited the destroyer at night to open an love class in her dream. The two of them fell in love sweetly together. First, the destroyer took Dongjung to the beach, and the two of them enjoyed the scenery together. Dongjung didn't feel anything, so the two of them went back to high school. At that time, she had a pale face and was a bit arrogant. Dongjung was sitting on the practice field watching the male students play soccer when the ball suddenly flew towards her. At this time, the destroyer appeared to protect her. Dongjung felt that it was not suitable, so she changed to another situation. Dongjung was a junior who had graduated from university but had always secretly loved a senior. Today, Dongjung met him again at the library. When the destroyer raised his head to talk to Dongjung, she didn't feel anything, and she didn't like it either. Dongjung thought that it would be more effective to try something practical. The rich and powerful boss fell in love with an ordinary girl. The destroyer drove a luxury car, and he demonstrated his reverse driving skills in front of Dongjung. He also gave Dongjung his bank card. All situations were tried, but Dongjung had no feelings. The destroyer felt bored. He was about to turn around and leave when Dongjung told him that he should tell his story. Because to love someone, you must first understand their world. A wind blew. Dongjung entered the destroyer's consciousness space. In this space, there was a flower garden, bright flowers and many trees beside. When the destroyer walked, everything immediately withered. Flowers and grass could not live. This was the world of the destroyer. The things he liked, loved, even touched would all disappear. Dongjung saw the scene in front of her and suddenly felt sad. Such a god was pitiful. Dongjung gradually walked towards him. Wherever Dongjung went, all the flowers and grass revived. Dongjung understood the world of the destroyer, and she also understood what he was running away from. Dongjung held his hand and looked at him. The destroyer saw that his world had revived again. He was scared and let go of Dongjung's hand. Dongjung also woke up from the dream. The destroyer wanted to explain a little to Dongjung about the scene in last night's dream, but Dongjung didn't care. From now on, she would practice how to love him. Love begins with forgiveness. Hearing that, the destroyer had never loved before, so he started to get confused. He immediately went to find Sun Yoshin. He started to get angry. Now people still dare to forgive him. People really don't understand. Sun Yoshin explained the rules of this world. Love begins with forgiving the other person. The destroyer will gradually understand later. Dongjung's doorbell rang. Taksunjung came to find her again. This time, her younger brother asked for money. Now Taksunjung has found a new dream. He wants to become a color appraiser. Dongjung started to feel uncomfortable. Taksunjung used to study physical education, then he studied culinary, then he gave up everything. He couldn't do anything. Dongjung always paid for his dream. Why doesn't Taksunjung grow up a little more? If one day Dongjung is no longer around, What will he do? Hearing that, Tak Sun-jung was unhappy. He didn't force his sister to sacrifice for him. It was because Dong-jung volunteered. It was because Dong-jung himself felt his fate was tragic. Dong-jung wasn't the only one without a father or mother. Even if Tak Sun-jung told Dong-jung about his dream, she wouldn't understand. Dong-jung and Tak Sun-jung started arguing. The destroyer had seen everything. He really didn't like Dong-jung's personality. The destroyer told Dong-jung why she had always forgave others. Why did she always pretend to be kind? Now the destroyer was about to go out. He randomly found someone to entertain himself. Dong-jung didn't know if Dong-jung would forgive him. Hearing that, Dong-jung was angry. At this moment, Dong-jung really hoped that the destroyer could leave. After he left, the world would be at peace. After a snap of the destroyer's fingers, the two had reached the outskirts. The destroyer gave Dong-jung a gun. If this was Dong-jung's wish, he wanted her to try it. Dong-jung didn't agree. The destroyer took the gun back and pointed it at himself, but he found that there was no way to shoot himself. But when he pointed the gun at the sky, he was able to shoot. That's right, this was the fate of the destroyer. If he wanted to leave, he would have left long ago. If he didn't kill him, Dong-jung would have made him miserable. At least, he wouldn't be able to live happily. At this moment, the destroyer grabbed Dong-jung's hand. Compared to his misery, Dong-jung should worry more about himself. If one day he doesn't hold Dong-jung's hand, the pain will always be with her. At this moment, Dong-jung returns to reality. Such a hateful destroyer. Dong-jung is really not sure if she can truly love him. Ever since the argument with Dong-jung, the destroyer's mood has started to get bad. Every fire extinguisher he passes by explodes. Cars that get close to him have their tires blown out. Even the paintings hanging in the hallway fall down. He goes to the court and looks at the prisoner. He punished. He sees the other person's crazy death-like appearance, just like he thought. Humans don't deserve sympathy. Dong-jung suddenly receives a phone call from the hospital. The hospital said that Tak Sun-jung is being rushed to the hospital. Dong-jung doesn't care and just rushes out because since Dong-jung was very young, she also received phone calls from the hospital. They said that her parents had an accident. She was really afraid that the childhood memories would repeat themselves with Tak Sun-jung. Tak Sun-jung only had a broken leg. He pretended to be angry to call her. The prisoner was sentenced. He fought with the police in the hallway of the court. His head was hit against the wall and he passed out. Court police quickly took him to the hospital. Dong-jung immediately went to the hospital. She stood outside the hospital room and heard Tak Sun-jung making a phone call. Tak Sun-jung was not injured. She didn't expect him to be so childish when he was an adult. Dong-jung left angrily. When Tak Sun-jung chased after his sister, he met the doctor treating Dong-jung. On this side, the prisoner was taken to the ambulance. It turned out that he had been pretending all along. When he reached the hospital door, he saw the destroyer and Dong-jung talking. He immediately took a surgical knife and rushed towards the destroyer. When he was about to attack, Dong-jung blocked him in front. Through the doctor's story, Tak Sun-jung knew that his sister only had 3 months to live. He was heartbroken and burst into tears. Dong-jung's feet started to bleed profusely. It turned out that when the knife was about to stab Dong-jung, the destroyer had already grabbed the knife in the other person's hand. At this moment, Dong-jung was worried about his wound. The destroyer hugged Dong-jung. He told her not to look. He used his strength to push the prisoner away in a flash. The prisoner still didn't want to give up, but he found that he couldn't get close to the destroyer. The destroyer used his consciousness to control the prisoner's hand. He ended his life right in front of the destroyer like that. The destroyer told Dong-jung that this was his fate. No one would love him. Humans only hated him, feared him. Dong-jung looked at him sadly again. Could Dong-jung use her love to melt the destroyer's heart? At this moment, Dong-jung saw that he was covered in blood. Dong-jung raised her hand to help him wipe the blood away. The destroyer grabbed Dong-jung's hand. Then she reacted. It turns out that his wound has slowly closed. The destroyer is very angry. Why did Dong-jung do that? Didn't she hope he would disappear? Dong-jung knew that nothing would happen to him. Why did she still intend to take the knife for him? If she continued to meddle in other people's business like this, one day she would lose her life. Dong-jung understood, but she couldn't stand by and watch him get hurt. Dong-jung began to unleash her daughter's ability to cause trouble for no reason. Dong-jung said that she was terminally ill now. Why did the destroyer still yell at her? She was a patient. The destroyer warned Dong-jung that the prisoner from earlier would die. He hoped she wouldn't interfere in his life anymore. Tak Sun-jung knew that Dong-jung only had 3 months to live. Seeing Dong-jung covered in blood, he cried in pain. The three of them got into a car to go home. Tak Sun-jung's tears were like a faucet that kept falling. At the door, Tak Sun-jung asked the destroyer if he had known Dong-jung was sick for a long time. After knowing the answer, he immediately changed his attitude and hugged the destroyer tightly. It turned out that the destroyer was a good person. Tak Sun-jung held the hands of the destroyer and Dong-jung. Tak Sun-jung said that the two of them had to live well now. Tak Sun-jung agreed to let the two of them date. Tak Sun-jung told Dong-jung that he would try harder in the future. At this time, Tak Sun-jung held back his tears. Tak Sun-jung called his friend friend and said that he was no longer pursuing his dream. He wanted to make money. Taksin Jung saw the recruitment poster of the roadside cafe. The next day, the destroyer came to the hospital yesterday. He remembered everything that happened. He didn't understand why he wanted to protect humanity. Sun Yo-shin explained that Dong-jung protected him first. He refused to admit it. If Dong-jung is gone, her wish to destroy the world will no longer be fulfilled. Now that he and Dong-jung have signed a contract, he cannot use his mind-reading ability to see what she is thinking. Sun Yo-shin tells the destroyer that if he wants to know what someone is thinking, he just needs to open his mouth and ask. When Dong-jung wakes up from her dream, she finds the destroyer in her house. He immediately asks Dong-jung why she protected him yesterday. Dong-jung makes a suggestion. Instead of asking why he is not like a normal person, he should use his eyes to feel why she did that and what the reason is. Dong-jung reminds him that if he uses his ability, he will break the rules. He should try to observe carefully. The destroyer now starts to observe. He tells Dong-jung that he feels she is angry. He feels that she is very annoying. Dong-jung didn't pay any attention to him. She had been with him for so long, but she still didn't know his name. The destroyer said he had no name. Dong-jung named him Myeol-mang, but Myeol-mang was not happy. When he was about to turn around and leave, she quickly held him back. Dong-jung was unable to stand. When she was about to fall, Myeol-mang hugged her. The two of them just looked at each other, and the atmosphere gradually became silent. At this time, Myeol-mang looked at Dong-jung. He could not guess what she was thinking, which made him a little confused. Dong-jung went to work in the script writing department. She discovered that Myeol-mang had transformed into her colleague. He appeared at the company. Dong-jung was about to scold him when department head Ju-wang called her into a meeting. During the conversation, Ju-wang asked if she and her colleague had been dating recently. Why did her colleague keep staring at her? Dong-jung felt a little confused. She was about to tell Myeol-mang to go somewhere else when Myeol-mang started acting spoiled. When Myeol-mang used a needle to prick his injured index finger, he wanted Dong-jung to blow on the wound. Dong-jung thoughtfully helped him apply the bandage. This made Myeol-mang not understand why she did that. Dong-jung said she knew his wound would heal quickly, but applying it like this was to comfort him. Dong-jung wanted to remind him that someone would pity him in the future. Only then did Myeol-mang smile happily. At lunch, Myeol-mang wanted to sit across from her. Dong-jung changed seats, and he changed seats too. Whatever Dong-jung ate, he wanted to eat that too. The two of them even got on the crowded subway together. At this time, Dong-jung really had a headache because Myeol-mang kept disturbing her life. She said what to do. At this time, Myeol-mang whispered in her ear that the man in front of her would get off at the next stop. Dong-jung was really happy because this was the first time she had a seat on the train since she started working. Myeol-mang was very pleased. Just now, he saw Dong-jung's expression and felt that she was very tired. He guessed that she really wanted to sit down. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. Myeol-mang felt that he was about to master, so he was a little happy. This cute action of Myeol-mang made Dong-jung's little heart flutter. The next day, Dong-jung went to work. The director had a video conference with everyone. Now, the author who wrote the series that earned the most money suddenly stopped writing. The director told Dong-jung to handle it immediately. This author was actually a university student. To sweeten him, Dong-jung took out a business license from the legal entity so that the two of them could go eat something delicious. When the two of them arrived at the restaurant, Dong-jung discovered that Myeol-mang had transformed into the restaurant owner. While eating, the author complained that there was no sausage and wanted to eat more. He said why there was nothing. He wanted to add some dumplings, but there weren't any. He wanted to add some quail eggs, but there weren't any. He started to get angry and complained about how bad the service here was. To cheer up the author, Dong-jung had no choice but to go to the convenience store to buy it for him. Myeol-mang came to him at this moment. Myeol-mang started to get angry. Why is a kid so picky? He only eats sausages, and he has no manners. The author was unhappy. He thought that what if he was older? When the author went out, he said that Dong-jung would pay later. Even though Myeol-mang was very angry, he couldn't show it casually. Seeing the author being chased away by Myeol-mang, Dong-jung started to criticize Myeol-mang. Until now, Dong-jung still didn't understand why Myeol-mang had been following her since just now. Myeol-mang explained that not only since just now, since he was born, he had been following her. It was just that Dong-jung had only noticed now. Before he had only observed her work. He didn't expect that he would actually appear in her life. Dong-jung's work wasn't going well. She was feeling depressed when Myeol-mang covered her eyes. When Dong-jung opened her eyes, she found herself on the beach. When Dong-jung got closer, she realized that this wasn't a dream. Just now, Myeol-mang looked at her eyes. He felt that Dong-jung was very tired. It was time for her to relax. Dong-jung told her story. In the past, every time she wanted to cry, she would go to the beach. When Dong-jung missed her parents, she would also go to the beach. When Taksin-jung angered her, she would also go to the beach. Myeol-mang didn't understand. If Dong-jung wasn't happy, why didn't she cry? Dong-jung explained. She didn't want others to see her weak. At this moment, Myeol-mang was looking at Dong-jung Dong-jung, who was sitting absent-mindedly. Suddenly he wanted to reach out and touch her head and comfort her. When he discovered the ergo stuck on his hand, he stopped. He said that now he wanted to seduce her. Hearing that, Dong-jung raised his head to look at him and asked him if he wanted to kiss him now. Mil-mang lifted Dong-jung's chin and was about to kiss him. Dong-jung suddenly felt embarrassed and stepped back. The wind on the sea was too strong. Mil-mang grabbed Dong-jung's hand, and in the blink of an eye, the two of them returned to the door. At this time, Dong-jung's heart was beating erratically. Mil-mang reminded Dong-jung that her clothes were dry and should be put inside the house. Dong-jung's mind was in chaos now, and she angrily returned to her room. Mil-mang was about to go out to work when Dong-jung grabbed his hand and held him back. Today, Dong-jung wanted to go with Mil-mang, and the two of them went to a rural area. At this time, a group of people were performing a traditional ceremony. This was the first time Dong-jung had seen someone else do this, and she was very happy. Mil-mang told Dong-jung that the traditional ceremony would also be destroyed, and this was also his job. Dong-jung began to comfort Mil-mang. She knew that before the super rookie was destroyed, it would emit a very bright light, then it would fall down. You can consider it destruction, or you can call it being born. Mil-mang heard this, but he always thought that he had chosen Dong-jung wrongly, so he had this trouble, but he changed his mind. From now on he hoped Dong-jung would love him. Maybe loving him was also a good idea, hoping she could be the first person to love him. That's right, our cold Mil-mang finally confessed. Dong-jung is a kind girl. Can she use her heart to melt Mil-mang? How sweet will their love be next? At this moment, he confessed to Dong-jung. Hearing that, Dong-jung was a little fascinated. Dong-jung had long since discovered that every time he saw something disappear, his face would show a look of pain. She knew he was a good person. Now Dong-jung no longer believed that after taking Mil-mang's life, she could live happily. Hearing that, Mil-mang suddenly felt moved. In this world, there was finally someone who loved him. After Dong-jung said those words, she began to regret it. Now, she started to have feelings for Mil-mang. What should she do? She took the blanket to return to her bedroom so she could keep her distance from him. Mil-mang immediately held her back and told her to sleep with him. Dong-jung immediately said that he was acting spoiled, like that wouldn't work on her. Mil-mang began to threaten her. If she went in, he would burn down her room. There was no other way, so the two of them could only sleep on the sofa. The more Dong-jung thought about it, the angrier she got. Did Mil-mang understand what love was? Why did she always tell her to love him? Mil-mang suddenly said, "I love you, I will leave for her." Hearing that, Dong-jung's mood began to get chaotic. The next day, Mil-mang came to find Sun Yo-shin and confided her feelings. Sun Yo-shin was very happy for him. Mil-mang has lived in this world for such a long time, and finally Mil-mang has someone who agrees to name him. She has long seen that Mil-mang's purpose is to make Dong-jung wish for that, so that he can disappear. But is the truth like he wishes? Sun Yo-shin reminds him that human emotions are more dangerous than he imagined. In order to have someone, one can give up the whole world. By then, will Dong-jung really be able to see him go? Dong-jung was on his way home from work when suddenly the things in his hand were taken away by Mil-mang. He grabbed her hand and started saying sweet words. Dong-jung is very good now. She already knows that Mil-mang is playing tricks. She reminds Mil-mang that if she wants to say sweet words in the future, remember to give her flowers. Don't try to seduce her. The two were arguing loudly when Tak-sun-jung saw them. Tak-sun-jung felt that these two people were very much like husband and wife. Since she knew that her sister was sick, Tak-sun-jung had slowly grown up. Tak-sun-jung even knew how to buy her sister red bean cakes, her favorite food. Dong-jung told Tak-sun-jung to go somewhere with her tomorrow. It turned out that Dong-jung took Tak-sun-jung to the hospital for a physical examination. She didn't have much time left to live, so she hoped to help Tak-sun-jung prepare thoroughly. That way, she wouldn't worry. Fortunately, all of Tak-sun-jung's organs were healthy. Hearing that, the doctor was very relieved. Dong-jung now had something to worry about. A while ago, Tak-sun-jung had called the doctor. He hoped that the doctor could try to persuade his sister to receive treatment. The doctor took out a bottle of medicine and gave it to her, reminding her not to give up. Even though the chance of a successful surgery was slim, continuing to live was still more hopeful. Dong-jung went to the hospital garden, and suddenly she met Sun Yo-shin. Dong-jung remembered that she had met this girl at the bus stop. Next to Sun Yo-shin was a flower pot. She said this was the plant she was growing. Sun Yo-shin was waiting for the plant to sprout. She didn't know what it would grow into. If something strange sprouted, Sun Yo-shin would pull it out because this thing belonged only to her. When leaving, Sun Yo-shin gave Dong-jung a gift. Dong-jung opened it. Inside was a crystal ball. Dong-jung was saying goodbye to the doctor when Mil-mang suddenly appeared. Mil-mang gave her a bouquet of flowers. The doctor looked at Mil-mang and felt very surprised. It turned out that Dong-jung still had such a lovely younger brother. Dong-jung explained that he wasn't a younger brother. The doctor said that this could be a boyfriend. The doctor didn't expect Dong-jung to find such a young boyfriend. Of course, love transcends gender, so age is nothing. Tak-sun-jung also saw Mil-mang. Tak-sun-jung said that Mil-mang Myeolman changed her hair color today. It suits Myeolman very well. Dongjun felt strange. Didn't Myeolman always have this hair color? The three of them decided to take a photo. When Dongjun looked at the photo, she suddenly discovered that the person on the phone didn't look like Myeolman. Myeolman explained that his appearance in everyone's heart was different. Myeolman also felt strange. Dongjun was the first person to be able to see Myeolman's true self. Moreover, Dongjun was also able to call out Myeolman's name. Perhaps for Myeolman, that was Dongjun's way of existing. Everything was the first time. Faced with Myeolman's sudden confession, Dongjun's heart suddenly fluttered. At this time, Dongjun went to work to ask her colleague if they could wish for one thing. What would they wish for? Colleagues say they want to get rich or become rich stars. Dongjun is having a headache over her wish, but her colleague tells Dongjun that she will fulfill her wish soon, which is to meet her prospective date. When the prospective date arrives, Dongjun sees Myeolman transform into someone else. Myeolman joins the date again. Myeolman becomes her colleague's prospective date. The two feed each other in front of Dongjun, as if there is no one else. The person next to her also starts to act friendly. He plans to ask Dongjun to go see a movie after eating. Seeing that Dongjun seems a little moved, Myeolman gets angry. Myeolman makes her colleague and the prospective date fate. The two will leave now. Anyway, they will wake up in 5 minutes. This time, Myeolman came just to make Dongjun forget the thought of loving someone else. In this world, there is no one suitable to disappear in place of Dongjun. Myeolman told Dongjun away. Myeolman asked her if she wanted to wish right now that she loved him. Dongjun felt strange. Could she wish for this too? Myeolman stared at her. The atmosphere gradually froze. Myeolman caressed her ear. Dongjun suddenly took the initiative to approach Myeolman. She was about to kiss him when Myeolman restored her consciousness. That's right, Myeolman could manipulate people's inner thoughts. Ever since Myeolman did that to Dongjun, Dongjun was very angry. Dongjun was talking to herself when Section Chief Ju Wang suddenly appeared beside her. Dongjun asked Ju Wang the same question. If she could only live for 100 days, what would Section Chief Ju Wang wish for? Ju Wang thought she was helping the author visualize the plot of the novel. Ju Wang said then, in the remaining time, love. Could it be that she could only wish that she loved Myeolman? Ju Wang explained that she misunderstood. He didn't want Dongjun to love someone else, but to make the man fall madly in love with her. The answer of the head of the department, Ju Wang, made Dongjun suddenly have a new way of thinking. The sky was now pouring rain. Dongjun was getting off the bus when she found Myeolman standing at the bus stop waiting for her. At this time, Myeolman held Dongjun's hand. The two of them didn't say anything. They ran in the rain. Dongjun didn't understand why Myeolman didn't use space teleportation magic, but was drenched in the rain like that. Myeolman explained that rain was nothing. Even if they didn't have an umbrella, they could still get there in the rain. They would be home soon. Dongjun kept staring at him. Now she had a wish. She hoped that Myeolman could love her. Could this be considered a wish? Myeolman said no. Dongjun was feeling a little disappointed when Myeolman suddenly touched her face. Then he kissed her. They kissed in the rain. Sanyoshin was looking at her flower pot at this time. If the system had an error, Sanyoshin would fix it. She would delete it. Myeolman suddenly stopped moving. He took a step back. Dong went forward to confirm. She found that Myeolman suddenly disappeared. In the end, did Sanyoshin want to let Myeolman experience the true love of the world, or was there another purpose? After Myeolman fell in love with Dongjun, how would their fates change? Dongjun immediately went home. She found that Myeolman had disappeared. The next day, Dongjun went to work disappointed. Dongjun found that the author from last time came to find her. The author told her that he wanted to update a new article now. The author also said that the reason was that recently every night he had been dreaming of a strange man threatening him. That man said that if he didn't continue writing, he wouldn't let the author live in peace. Sometimes he pushed the author down a cliff. Sometimes he made the author fall off the elevator. Every day he was so scared that he didn't dare to sleep. He was also thinking about random things. Hearing that, Dongjun reacted. It turned out that Myeolman had always been secretly protecting her. She didn't understand where Myeolman was now. At this moment, Myeolman was being taken to the rooftop. He didn't know where this was. After a sound of falling, he had returned to the year 2014 in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, Myeolman saw Dongjun. At this moment, Dongjun was preparing to get on the bus. He was about to greet Dongjun when Sanyoshin told him that Dongjun couldn't see him at this time. These were just teaching materials built by Sanyoshin from fragments of the past. They were specially created for Myeolman to see. Dongjun was on the bus on the way to the company for an interview. Suddenly, the bus had a flat tire. Dongjun immediately rushed to the company to apply. Dongjun found out that he had missed the first round of interviews. Myeolman had seen everything. Sanyoshin told Myeolman that it was all because of his existence that Dongjun had such bad luck. The scene changed to the year 2012. At that time, Dongjun was just a high school student. She worked very hard to prepare lunch, but was spilled by her classmates. She was bullied because because of Mealmon. Later, Mealmon saw Dongjung when she was young. She received a phone call informing her that her parents had an accident, and the reason for everything was because of him. Mealmang couldn't bear it anymore. He shouted loudly and returned to the present. People told Mealmang that this was his fate. At this time, Mealmang got angry. Everything around her seemed to fall apart. Sun Yoshin immediately returned to normal. She told Mealmang that now he understood what kind of fate his existence was. After Dongjung truly loved him, would Mealmang obediently disappear? Did you really accept Dongjung's wish? Sun Yoshin told him to think carefully. Dongjung is now terminally ill. Isn't it also because of his existence? Have you thought carefully now? Sun Yoshin told him to leave after being angry. Right now, Dongjung is waiting for the subway alone. Mealmon's sudden disappearance makes her feel extremely confused. Dongjung is thinking about where to go to find Mealmang when she sees his figure at the other end of the subway station. Dongjung immediately runs over. Dongjung is climbing the stairs when the tumor in her head suddenly flares up. When Dongjung is about to fall down the stairs, Mealmon immediately comes forward and grabs her hand. The two of them are sitting in the car. At this time, Dongjung is really angry. Dongjung asks him why he ran away. Faced with these questions, Mealmon cannot answer. Dongjung thinks of a way. Now she wants to go to Mealmon's house. It was the house he was living in now. She wanted to go there now. If he disappeared again for no reason, she could at least go to his house to look for him. At this time, the two of them arrive at a villa in the suburbs. Moman told Dongjung that if he was chased away by someone else, she would not be able to find him again. Previously, it was because he had miscalculated. He had made the wrong decision. Dongjung was right. He could not love her. Mealmon had no way of loving her, so he could not fulfill her wish. He told Dongjung that the two of them did not need to live together anymore and should end things here. Dongjung was about to step forward to grab Mealmon when she blinked and realized that she was being taken back to her room. Dongjung was alone facing the empty room. The next day, Dongjung went to work and the author came to find her. The author said that her work might not be updated anymore because she had cancer. The author only has a few months to live. She has to be hospitalized for treatment in a few days. Now the author wants to cherish her time. The author reminds Dongjung not to do things that she will regret. At night, when the colleagues are having dinner, the other authors all badmouth the female author. The female author divorced her husband because of her stubborn personality. Now she has cancer, but no one is by her side anymore. They tell Dongjung that as a girl, you should be gentle, otherwise no one will care. Hearing that, Dongjung can't stand it anymore. Dongjung doesn't need to worry about her marriage because she also has cancer. Anyway, Dongjung only has 3 months to live, so there's no need to think about this problem. Dongjung tells the author to stop bad-mouthing others. If he has time, he should care about his work. In front of everyone, Dongjung angrily runs out. Dongjung went back to the intersection where the accident happened. Dongjung stood at the red light, hesitating, not daring to go. Mealmang had told her that if she called his name, he would appear. Now, no matter what Dongjung called, Mealmang was nowhere to be seen. Dongjung angrily ran up to the rooftop. If Mealmang didn't come, she would jump down. When Dongjung was about to jump down, she felt too scared. Dongjung disappointedly returned to her room. She sadly lay on the floor and slept soundly. At this time, Mealmang appeared in Dongjung's house again. Mealmang quietly held Dongjung's hand. The two had promised that they would hold hands once a day. That way, Dongjung wouldn't feel any pain. The next day, when Dongjung woke up, she found an extra pillow next to her. She realized that Mealmang had come to her house last night. Looking at the red string on her hand, she decided to take it off. At this time, Dongjung had to be hospitalized again because of the pain. The doctor told Taksun Jung that Dongjung's illness had gotten worse and that he needed to receive treatment quickly. Mealmang sat alone by the broken bridge. Sun Yoshin came to find Mealmang and asked what he was thinking now. Surely Mealmang knew that Dongjung was sick and in the hospital. It was good that Mealmang didn't visit Dongjung. She didn't need to see him for the rest of her life, didn't need to care about Dongjung's life or death. Then the fate between her and Mealmang had ended. The decision Mealmang made at this time was right, because only then could Mealmang continue to live. Hearing that, Mealmang stood up and left. Sun Yoshin was a little happy. Only children who know how to rebel against their parents can gradually grow up. Sun Yoshin looked at the flower pot next to her. Inside the flower pot had not yet sprouted. At this time, Dongjung had woken up. Dongjung went out into the hallway alone. At the end of the hallway, Dongjung saw Mealmang appear in front of her. Mealmang looked at her with pity. Dongjung told Mealmang that she knew he would come. Don't think that when he disappeared, disappeared, Dongjun wouldn't find him. Dongjun had a way to force him to appear. She was sure that Milmang was a good person. Milmang couldn't help but care about her. Before her wish was granted, she wouldn't give up. Milmang didn't say a word, he just hugged her. Dongjun's life had always been miserable. Dongjun had also resented her, but then she understood. Dongjun's life wasn't all misery. Now that Dongjun was in pain, wasn't Milmang by her side? Dongjun said he couldn't escape. Before Dongjun fulfilled his wish, she definitely wouldn't forgive him. Milmang didn't say anything, she just hugged Dongjun tightly. His sudden disappearance made both of them unable to contain their longing. Milmang also decided to tell Dongjun everything. Sun Yoshin looked at her flower pot. Suddenly she discovered a sprout in this barren land. Milmang told her story. Dongjun lost her parents because of him. Dongjun sat by the sea. She thought about all the misfortunes because of him. Even this illness was because of him. Hearing that, Dongjun did not think so. Dongjun originally liked winter. She also liked the night sky. Dongjun liked the end. Or in other words, winter was the beginning of spring. Because of the existence of the new destroyer. Instead of saying the destroyer was unlucky, it could also be said to be happy. In general, it was that feeling. Just like before, Dongjun did not like the rain, but getting wet was inevitable. Milmang was such an existence. Dongjun told Milmang to tell these words to Milmang's superiors. Hearing that, Milmang happily smiled. It turns out that Dongjun has accepted him. The two were talking when Dongjun suddenly disappeared. Milmang immediately went to Dongjun's house. He discovered that there were more strangers here. He entered the house, but everything was arranged differently than Dongjun's house. Milmang went to find Dongjun's younger brother. Milmang asked him where Dongjun was. Taksunjung felt strange because he was an only child and had no sister. Milmang went to Dongjun's workplace, but all his colleagues had no impression of Dongjun. Milmang realized that Dongjun had disappeared. Moreover, Dongjun had also had all traces of him erased from this world by someone else. At this time, Dongjun came to a beautiful flower garden. The person who brought Dongjun there was Sun Yoshin. Sun Yoshin quietly took Dongjun away from Milmang's world. Sun Yoshin took out her flower pot. She said that this thing absorbed Dongjun's misfortunes to grow. After Milmang and Dongjun met for the first time, she felt that there were people in this world who were more pitiful than her. Dongjun also realized that the girl in front of her was Milmang's superior. She was the one who chased Milmang away from Dongjun. Why did Sun Yoshin blame all the misfortunes on Milmang? Dongjun asked her why she did that. Sun Yoshin explained that whether the world was destroyed or losing the person she loved to continue living, either choice was painful for Dongjun. Sun Yoshin had no choice but to let Milmang know the outcome of the matter. Sun Yoshin took out the crystal ball and gave it to Dongjun. Now, Dongjun's fate was in Dongjun's hands. Some Seoshin told Dongjun that the exit to the flower garden was at the end of the road. Dongjun went to the wooden door and knocked, but the one who opened the door was Milmang. When Dongjun turned around, she found that the flower garden had disappeared. At this moment, Milmang hugged Dongjun tightly. He told her that the place she had just arrived at was the yard of the gods. During the time Dongjun disappeared, everyone forgot about Dongjun's existence. The feeling of losing Dongjun made Milmang feel very scared. The two were about to say a few sweet words when Taksunjung suddenly opened the door and walked in. Seeing her sister's house connected to another space, Taksunjung did not expect the man in front of her to be a god. Moreover, Milmang could also hear all the words in Taksunjung's heart. Taksunjung suddenly felt like he was going crazy. He asked Dongjun if he was under too much pressure, that his nerves were so messed up right now. Taksunjung reacted. If Milmang was a god, did Milmang come to take her sister away? Milmang Tar said no, he came to protect Dongjun. Seeing that Taksunjung was feeling happy, Milmang used magic on Taksunjung to make Taksunjung forget everything that happened today. Finally, when Taksunjung woke up, he found himself in the hospital. Taksunjung burst into tears in front of Dongjun. He said he had a nightmare just now. Taksunjung was about to act spoiled with Milmang when Milmang immediately avoided him. The two returned home. Milmang held Dongjun's hand again. He tied another red string around her wrist. Dongjun also said, "Let's stay here. Let's sleep together today." Sleeping together, Dongjun said, it was actually the sofa. Each person slept on their own place. At night, when Milmang woke up, he found Sun Yoshin waiting for him in front of the door. Milmang warned Sun Yoshin not to attack Dongjun from now on. After Sun Yoshin talked to Dongjun, Sun Yoshin knew that Dongjun loved Milmang. Furthermore, Dongjun also said that she and Milmang being together was not unlucky. This was beyond Sun Yoshin's expectations. Love, though invisible, is still love. I hope Milmang enjoys her journey. The next day, Dongjun went to the female author who had cancer. The female author also knew that Dongjun was also sick now. The female author hoped that Dongjun could cherish her time in the following days. When Dongjun went out, she found Milmang waiting for her in front of the door. Dongjun mustered up the courage to hold his hand. When passing the park, Dongjun told Milmang that in spring, cherry blossoms would bloom in this park. The crowd was crowded, not knowing if Dongjun could wait until next spring. At this moment, the sky suddenly had a lot of cherry blossom petals falling, the entire cherry blossom tree blooming before Dongjung's eyes. Dongjun was overwhelmed by this scene. Myeolmong told her that he only turned back time a little. This was just a small matter to him. Seeing the beautiful scenery in front of Dongjun, she felt very happy. This reminded her of when she was young. She went to this park with her parents. They were very happy at that time. Myeolmong followed Dongjun's every step. Myeolmong held her hand tightly. He took her to the amusement park. In the park, the two sat on the Ferris wheel together. Dongjun looked at the scenery outside the window. She suddenly thought about many things. She hoped that when she left, no one would remember her. Only then would her friends not be sad because of her departure. Myeolmong looked at the kind girl in front of him. He approached and kissed her. Dongjun was a little embarrassed because Myeolmong kissed her without saying anything. Myeolmong told her that in the future, Dongjun could make a few small wishes. He could help her make them come true. Dongjun had already said her wish. She had told Myeolmong before on a rainy day that she only wanted Myeolmong to love her. Myeolmong now walked in front of her. He said that there was no need to wish for this. Dongjun was about to ask the reason when a girl bumped into her, and when Dongjun looked closely, she discovered that this girl was her deceased mother. Myeolmong felt that Dongjun might be missing his family, so he turned back time. Myeolmong said his answer just now. He hoped that Dongjun would love him. Now, besides Dongjun, he no longer cared about anything else. Therefore, Dongjun did not need to wish for him to love her. While the two were talking, Dongjun's aunt suddenly pulled her luggage back from abroad. They were together for many days, so Dongjun and Myeolmong loved each other even more. What difficulties will their love encounter next? In the past, Myeolmong once dreamed of becoming a normal person. He wanted to eat like everyone else. He wanted to sleep like them. He wanted to be loved like those children. He wondered if he could become a normal person. But everyone usually has a place to go to. They will die at the end of their lives. They are different from him. Everything around him is always changing. He realized that someone who has nowhere to go and a life without an end like him will never be able to become a human being. Back to the present, Dongjun ran away when he saw his aunt. Dongjun's aunt was very angry because Dongjun didn't say anything about her illness. Myeolmong still didn't understand what was going on. On this side, Lee Hyunju came to see Najina. She was Dongjun's best friend. The two looked at each other lovingly. He is the editor-in-chief Ju Wang. These two people both like her. Dongjun's friend is really different. Lee Hyunju wants to see Najina to talk. As soon as she finished speaking, Najina closed the door and told Lee Hyunju to go downstairs and wait for her. Ju Wang was confused at this moment. He didn't understand what was going on. Ju Wang asked Najina if it was because he was here. If so, he could leave. Najina apologized to Ju Wang. Then she stammered and tactfully sent Ju Wang away. It seemed that the handsome Ju Wang was bluntly cancelled by her. Lee Hyunju knew that the two of them had broken up. He felt regretful about breaking up with Najina. Lee Hyunju wanted Najina to reconsider. Lee Hyunju said that he had waited for Lee Hyunju too long. 9 years had passed. It was too late now. Lee Hyunju said that he felt happy being with Najina, but Najina coldly left. Who did you choose in the end? On the other side, Dongjun was being chased by her aunt. Aunt Dongjun pretended to be exhausted and sat down. She waited until Dongjun came to check and immediately grabbed Dongjun. Aunt Dongjun's trick was successful. Then the three of them went inside to talk. Dongjun hurriedly pulled Myeolmong down. She said that it was rude for him to stand in front of the adults like that. Next was the interrogation of Dongjun's boyfriend. First was the greeting. Dongjun wondered. She didn't understand how Aunt Dongjun knew that this was her boyfriend. It turned out that Tak Sun-jung had shown her the photo of Myeolmong. Aunt Dongjun asked where Myeolmong's house was, why he was still here at 12 o'clock at night. Myeolmong was about to say that he was with Dongjun when he was stopped by Dongjun. Dongjun dragged Myeolmong out and gave him the phone. Dongjun told Myeolmong to remember to contact her. Myeolmong felt she was very cute. He smiled happily. Dongjun's aunt said that she was not angry because she knew that Dongjun was afraid that others would be sad. Dongjun kept it to herself. Her aunt said that Dongjun could do whatever she wanted. Her aunt blamed Dongjun for why she had to suffer alone like this. Dongjun still had relatives around her. Could it be that Dongjun did not care about people around her? Dongjun was touched by her aunt's words. Dongjun was speechless and had tears in her eyes. After that, she went out to the terrace and called Myeolmong and asked him what he was doing. Myeolmong did not expect that Dongjun's aunt was so similar to Dongjun's mother. Dongjun said that they were sisters, so they looked alike. Dongjun thought that at that time, Myeolmong brought her mother back. The next day, Dongjun and her aunt went to the hospital for a checkup. Myeolmong transformed into a doctor again. He said there was a new drug they needed to find people to test it in clinical trials. Dongjun's name was also on the list, but she had to wait for the blood test results. After leaving the hospital, her aunt told Dongjun that Dongjun's boyfriend was a bit ugly compared to the doctor later earlier. Dongjung retorted that Mil Mang was handsome. After sending Dongjung's aunt off, she and Mil Mang went to a cell phone store. Dongjung bought a new phone for Mil Mang in case he disappeared again, not because she liked Mil Mang's good night wishes. Dongjung asked Mil Mang what she should do now that she had a phone. Mil Mang called Dongjung, and he told them to go out together. They arrived at a small island, and Mil Mang gave Dongjung a camera. As far as he knew, everyone in the school had died, and there was no one left. The boy wanted to see his teacher. The boy wanted his teacher to personally give him his diploma. At this time, Mil Mang transformed into the boy's teacher. He went in front of the boy and said that this was the school's graduation ceremony, so he had to come. The grandmother and grandchild smiled happily. Dongjung took a photo of the three of them. When the two left, Dongjung asked Mil Mang if this school still existed. Mil Mang said that there were no more students and teachers, so it would not be able to exist. At this time, Dongjung mentioned Son Yo-shin in the garden. Mil Mang had met Son Yo-shin in the hospital. She saw Son Yo-shin wearing a patient's dress. Mil Mang said that it was because Son Yo-shin was sick. Mil Mang said that since birth, Son Yo-shin had been sick. Yo-shin was in pain like that until she died. When she was revived, she was sick again. She was always in that loop. Dongjung's aunt and uncle went to visit Dongjung's mother. She hoped that Dongjung's mother in heaven would bless Dongjung's surgery to be successful. At this time, Mil Mang led Dongjung to the shopping mall. Dongjung picked out a few pairs of shoes for her younger brother. She planned to buy the limited edition bag, but there was only one left, and there was another customer who wanted to buy the bag. This customer had waited 100 days to buy the bag. Dongjung used her sick person advantage. She pitifully said that she only had 100 days left to live, so she wanted to give her aunt a final gift before she passed away. This made the other customer want to cry. This trick was unexpectedly effective. She finally got the bag. The two of them then went to the studio to take souvenir photos. Dongjung wanted a photo of the two of them. On the way home, Dongjung kept looking at the photo of the two of them. Dongjung felt very happy. She even took Mil Mang's phone and set it as a screenshot. Dongjung then quickly ran into the house. Mil Mang told Dongjung that we should go on a date later. Later, Dongjung appeared at a high-class restaurant. The two sat at the table. The waiter started to bring the first dishes. Dongjung's aunt, Dongjung's best friend, and Dongjung's younger brother all appeared. They happily waved to Dongjung. Dongjung looked at everyone having fun with each other. She felt very satisfied and happy. When Dongjung woke up from her dream, she didn't expect that the people she was closest to were all here. Everyone happily ate together. Mil Mang came to see Son Yo-shin. At this time, Son Yo-shin was very sick. She had to isolate herself with a curtain. Mil Mang apologized for not listening to Son Yo-shin in the past, and from now on he wouldn't be like that anymore. Mil Mang said this wasn't a truce, but his surrender. Son Yo-shin asked why Mil Mang intended to be a good child. Mil Mang said he would try to be a good child so that what Son Yo-shin was worried about wouldn't happen. Mil Mang said Son Yo-shin looked even more pitiful than Dongjung. He thanked Son Yo-shin because she created today's Mil Mang. Some writers refused to renew their contracts, and they also didn't want to cooperate with Dongjung's company. The writers demanded that Dongjung be the one in charge before they would agree. The director was angry, so he asked the section chief Ju Wang to find a solution. The section chief said straight to the director's face that he had caused the problem, so he had to solve it. After speaking, Ju Wang returned to his desk. He reviewed Najina's messages. Ju Wang had met Li Hianju privately. He wanted to talk to Li Hian. Li Hianju asked if it was Najina's problem, right? Li Hianju said that if it was her problem, he didn't want to say anything. Then he chased Ju Wang out of the elevator. Dongjung was sitting alone on the street. Mil Mang appeared and held her hand. He said that it was inconvenient not to live together. Dongjung felt the same way. When Mil Mang turned to leave, Dongjung held his hand. Dongjung hesitantly said she wanted to live a little longer. Could he help her? Mil Mang bluntly told her no. He couldn't do those things because he was Mil Mang. Dongjung already knew this. She just wanted to ask. Every time he saw me, what did he think? He always told her that she had to live, right? While he himself always had a lifeless look in his eyes like someone who had died. Mil Mang came to a tree. At this time an old man appeared. The old man said the tree was very beautiful in bloom, but now it had withered. Mil Mang said it was because it couldn't live much longer. The old man thought that if that was the case, it would be like us. Mil Mang remembered the times he was with Dongjung. He remembered what Dongjung said. She said every time he saw her, what he thought. Mil Mang suddenly realized something. He quickly ran to Dongjung. At this time, she was standing on the rooftop. He approached Dongjung and said he loved her. He loved her very much. I wonder how the romantic feelings between these two will be. After Mil Mang realized that Dongjung didn't have much time left with him, he decided to confess to her. This was the 9th time Mil Mang confessed to Dongjung. Dongjung felt very touched. If so, let's get married. Then let's love each other. From today, the two were looking at each other passionately. At this time, Dongjung's aunt came to find her. On this side, Lee Hyun-ju also confessed to Na-ji-na. Na-ji-na was moved by his confession, but she still pretended to be angry. Na-ji-na threw clothes at Lee Hyun-ju. Na-ji-na said she was going crazy. Dong-jung asked Na-ji-na out for coffee. Dong-jung said that she had decided to love Mil-man. He was the person Na-ji-na met last time. Na-ji-na also said that Lee Hyun-ju had come to confess to her. Na-ji-na said that she was moved by Lee Hyun-ju's confession. Na-ji-na only needed to see Lee Hyun-ju smile to become infatuated. Na-ji-na felt that it was extremely pathetic. Na-ji-na advised Dong-jung to visit the hospital more often. Dong-jung felt that she still had a lot of things she wanted to do and a lot of people she wanted to meet, so she would postpone going to the hospital for the time being. Meanwhile, Mil-man was sitting on the phone with Dong-jung. Suddenly the phone rang. Dong-jung appeared at his door. Mil-man did not expect Dong-jung to contact her by personally coming to his house. She wanted to surprise him. Mil-man told Dong-jung that she should text him first before coming to his house. Dong-jung thought that when in love, she had to be proactive like this. Mil-man wondered if that's what love is all about. Dong-jung pretended to be stupid. She said she didn't remember what she just said. Mil-man asked why Dong-jung was avoiding him. Dong-jung immediately made an excuse that she was afraid of not having enough space. Mil-man said that the bed was so small, but she and he still slept together. Mil-man approached her. He told Dong-jung to put the vase down. She thought he was afraid that she would drop this expensive vase. Mil-man said that when Dong-jung held the vase, she would have no hands left. Mil-man approached Dong-jung. He stared into Dong-jung's eyes. Mil-man was about to kiss her when suddenly Dong-jung's phone rang. The ringing sound ruined the romantic atmosphere. At this time, Na-ji-na was being accused by author Ji of plagiarism, but in fact he was just looking for an excuse to tease Na-ji-na. He spoke to Na-ji-na in a rude and tactless manner. Na-ji-na felt so angry that she couldn't speak. When the editor-in-chief opened the door, he saw Na-ji-na holding a computer and throwing it at the author. Na-ji-na called author Ji a dirty scum. Author Ji thought Na-ji-na was crazy. Na-ji-na was angry when she heard that. She was about to pick up chair and throw it at author Ji. Ju-won immediately stopped her. Ju-won said that author Ji's work was as dirty as author Ji's personality. Author Ji was angry. He asked Ju-won whose side he was on. Ju-won said he was on the winner's side. Mil-man led Dong-jung to his garden. Dong-jung said that they should have met somewhere open, then she could have run away. Mil-mang said that she could run away from Mil-mang. Then he held Dong-jung's hand. The two looked at each other and laughed happily. The moon is beautiful tonight, but Mil-mang said that Dong-jung is even more beautiful. Dong-jung said that he should have thought before saying those words. In fact, when Dong-jung heard those words, she was moved. Mil-mang took Dong-jung home. Dong-jung wanted to invite Mil-mang into the house to eat barbecue. If Mil-mang really agreed, she would be in a difficult position. But Mil-mang was not afraid, and the two of them went into the house. At this time, Tak Sun-jung and his aunt and her husband were eating, and the two of them went in to eat with everyone. Mil-mang felt very happy to be with humans. At this time, the aunt's husband invited Mil-mang to a cup of wine. Tak Sun-jung intended to introduce Mil-mang's name to his aunt's husband, but he did not know Mil-mang's name. When asked, Mil-mang said the name Dong-jung gave her. He said Mil-mang. The aunt went in to get some cans of beer and discovered Dong-jung's memorial photo. The aunt could not hold back her emotions and burst into tears. Dong-jung saw that her aunt was not coming out for a long time, so she went in to check. Dong-jung found that her aunt was holding her photo and crying. Dong-jung was also moved and quietly returned to the dining table. Mil-mang clearly saw the sadness in Dong-jung's eyes. Dong-jung's aunt and Dong-jung then pretended to have a happy meal together. After eating, Dong-jung sent Mil-mang home. Mil-mang wanted Dong-jung to be able to speak her mind, because when he saw her sad, he didn't know what she was thinking. Dong-jung asked what he wanted her to talk about. He replied that he wanted her to say words of love. Dong-jung didn't know what to say, so she went home first. Lee Hyun-ju came home and saw Ju-won waiting for him. Lee Hyun-ju said that he had confessed to Na-ji-na. Ju-won was angry. He thought that the two of them shouldn't be in love. Ju-won also apologized to Lee Hyun-ju for crossing the line. The next day, Dong-jung went to see Sun Yo-shin. Dong-jung said that she used to resent the gods, the existence called God. She didn't expect that now she would have to carry the heavy world on her small shoulders. Sun Yo-shin smiled and said that lately she had only heard beautiful words from everyone. When Dong-jung left, Sun Yo-shin told her that the only person who could help Dong-jung right now was actually Dong-jung herself. Sun Yo-shin created Mil-mang for humans. Sun Yo-shin then thanked Dong-jung for the gift. Dong-jung went to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor wanted to invite her to his wedding. Dong-jung was a little jealous. Mil-mang suddenly appeared. He snatched the invitation. When Mil-mang looked at the name, Dong-jung's name was not on it. He felt lucky. Dong-jung thought that Mil-mang was following her. It seemed that Dong-jung forgot that this was a place where countless destruction happened. He said that this was his perfect hideout. She said that his face was too prominent to hide. Dong-jung then went to see her colleague. Colleague said that she changed her wish. She wanted Dongjung to get well soon. She asked Dongjung, who was sitting behind Dongjung. Since then, the colleague saw him staring at Dongjung. Dongjung said that he was her boyfriend. Dongjung told the colleague to pretend that he didn't see him. After that, Milmang took the colleague to meet the student from last time. Dongjung said that the author Dangona asked her to get his autograph. He said, "Dongjung, give me your hand. I'll sign for you." When Milmang saw this scene, she was very jealous. Dongjung asked the student that if he chose the person he loved, the world would be destroyed. But if he protected the world, the person he loved would be lost. She asked him what to do to have a happy ending. Milmang was thinking about something at this time. The author said that as long as the main character didn't love anyone, it would be fine. Although the main character would be very sad, in return, the people in the world would live happily. Dongjung sent the student's autograph to the author Dangona. The female author finally agreed to have surgery. Milmang was smoking when Dongjung hurriedly ran over and threw away his cigarette. Dongjung said he was crazy. Why did he touch such harmful things? At this time, Milmang suddenly proposed to Dongjung to marry him. They held hands, they kissed, they slept together. So shouldn't they get married next? Dongjung felt that it was still too early. She still had some things to do. Milmang thought that if she wanted to live with someone for the rest of her life, she would have to marry that person. After that, Dongjung brought Milmang to greet her parents. She said that before getting married, Milmang had to greet her parents first. Milmang introduced herself as Dongjung's boyfriend, hoping that her parents would agree to let her marry him. Dongjung said, "Aren't you going to kneel down?" She said that her father had already objected. After that, she held a birthday party for Milmang. Dongjung said he would grant Milmang one wish, except for marriage. Milmang said he wanted her to live on, and this wish would come true. Milmang wanted Dongjung to live happily in the world she loved, but she still had to love him. Dongjung had almost completed all the things she needed to do, but there was still the hardest and most painful thing, which was to break up with Milmang. She went out and looked at everyone with tears in her eyes. To save everyone, Dongjung could not love anyone. Dongjung packed her suitcase and was about to leave this world. Milmang already knew. He was waiting for her outside. He asked Dongjung where she was going. Dongjung guessed that Milmang knew she wanted to break up. He said that every time he went out with Dongjung, he knew what she was going to do or what her mood was like. Every moment on her face, the word break up appeared. Even now, Dongjung admitted that people were like that. If they love each other and then break up, they will never meet again. She said she would marry him if she survived and came back. This was the only way she could save him. Milmang asked her if she didn't care about the people around her. Dongjung said she would try. But what if it didn't work out? Dongjung would try her best in the remaining time. Dongjung had already fallen in love with him successfully. Dongjung sat on the beach and crossed out the last thing in her notebook, which was to break up with Milmang. Dongjung was sitting and crying in despair when Milmang appeared. Dongjung thought she could run away from Milmang. Chasing someone to the end was Milmang's talent. Dongjung angrily blamed Milmang. She said, "We've already broken up. Why do you still follow her?" When Milmang tried to hold Dongjung's hand, she pushed his hand away. She said that once they broke up, they wouldn't be able to see each other again. Milmang thought that Dongjung was just lying. He wanted her to say it with her heart, not with her mouth. From the time Dongjung knew she was afraid of leaving until she met him, she hated him, then she loved him. All those times, Dongjung did not say it with her heart. Dongjung always pretended to be strong. Milmang wanted Dongjung to say everything she had kept in her heart for so long. Dongjung was very touched by Milmang's words. Dongjung burst into tears. Dongjung told Milmang her wishes. Dongjung wanted to live with Milmang, with Toksunjo, with her aunt, with her sister, and with all the people she loved. Milmang hugged Dongjung. He said he also wanted to live with Dongjung and everyone. The two of them then sat and talked for a long time. She told Milmang that he and she came from those stars. If you go back in time, they all started from the same place. He said that because she and he both returned to the same place, they would never be separated. He returned the string to Dongjung. He wanted her to never break up with him again. The director was blaming Najina for arguing with author Ji, causing author Ji to stop cooperating. The director wanted Najina to personally apologize. The director said that without author Ji, the company would go bankrupt. Juwang disagreed. He couldn't stand author Ji's personality. Juwang said that if he invited author Ji back, he would quit. The director thought that Juwang wouldn't be able to live if he left the company. The director said to act as if Juwang's father was the owner of this building. His father was the real owner of the building. Dongjung told Milmang stories about his childhood. He felt happy to hear her tell stories. When Dongjung ate, he followed her lead. When he saw Dongjung happily looking at the children, he wanted to cast a spell to make Dongjung innocent, like a child. The two of them walked. Dongjung continued to talk about her childhood. Milmang asked Dongjung if she had grown up yet. She smiled. When they reached the beach, she said she was still growing up. When she saw Dongjung's smile. Mulmon was moved for the nth time. He stood still for half a day. Ju Wang asked Li Hunju to go play baseball. Li Hunju wanted to bet with Ju Wang. Whoever won would have to give the other person what they wanted. Ju Wang asked Li Hunju what he wanted. Li Hunju said he wanted Ju Wang's car or a woman. Ju Wang kept hitting the ball. Meanwhile, Li Hunju couldn't hit a single shot, yet Li Hunju boldly bet. Could it be that he had to give a woman to Ju Wang? Ju Wang said he would tell Li Hunju what he wanted later. Without saying anything, everyone could guess what Ju Wang wanted. An interesting thing is that Ju Wang and Li Hunju are siblings. A love war is about to happen. The next morning, Najina came to see Li Hunju. She wanted to date Li Hunju. She wanted to try 3 dates with Li Hunju. Najina wanted to see if he was right for her. After that, they left awkwardly. Li Hunju felt very happy in his heart, but it probably wouldn't last long. After that, Najina called Ju Wang. Najina said that from now on she would date Li Hunju. Ju Wang's face was cold as ice. He bluntly terminated the contract with Najina. Najina angrily disagreed. She wanted to be in the top 10 best authors. Ju Wang's face was cold, but he still gave Najina an umbrella. Ju Wang told her not to get wet. Mule Mang wanted to surprise Dongjung at this time. Mule Mang brought everyone in front of her. The aunt came and hugged Dongjung. That night, her aunt's husband wanted to talk to Dongjung. She told her uncle that she was a coward. She didn't know how to hide, and she made everyone worry about her. Dongjung was confused and didn't know what to do. If she lived, Mule Mang would die. If she saved him, everyone would die. Dongjung didn't know what to do. When she heard Dongjung, her uncle didn't understand what she was talking about. He told Dongjung not to worry because they were family. While she and Mule Mang were talking, she thanked him for calling everyone. He was afraid that everyone would worry about Dongjung. Najina advised Tak Sun Jung to care more about Dongjung's feelings. Everyone then had dinner together. The atmosphere was very thoughtful because her best friend and Tak Sun Jung took turns serving food to Dongjung. Dongjung couldn't hold back her emotions, and tears welled up in her eyes. While walking with Najina, Dongjung asked her if she liked Ju Wang. Najina denied it, saying she had decided to get back with Li Hunju. Dongjung was furious when he knew that Najina was getting back with Li Hunju. It was obvious that Najina liked Ju Wang, but Najina insisted that she didn't like him at all. Mule Mang was standing alone by the sea. He sensed that Son Yo-shin had fallen ill and fainted. He told Dongjung that he would go to the hospital for a bit and then come back right away. Dongjung told Mule Mang to go first. She would go later. When she met Son Yo-shin, Mule Mang blamed her for not telling him in advance, but she thought that everything was predestined. Mule Mang now remembered why he didn't want to love anyone, because when you love, you will get hurt. When Dongjung disappeared, he was very miserable. If that was the case, he shouldn't have loved in the first place. Son Yo-shin comforted Mule Mang. She said that the gods originally lived for humans, and he was also one of those gods, so he should live for humans and leave for humans. Mule Mang left the room. At this time, Dongjung also arrived at the hospital. She felt that Mule Mang was very sad when she looked into his eyes. Dongjung held his hand to comfort him. On the way, Dongjung asked about Son Yo-shin's condition. Mule Mang said that Son Yo-shin would not live much longer. This was also a common occurrence. He saw a motorbike rushing towards the child. He unconsciously ran over and saved the child. This was not something Mule Mang should do. When Dongjung looked at Mule Mang, she felt that he had now become a loving person. She asked him if it was okay to save the boy like that. He said that this was originally not right, but he had already saved him. Sometimes he mistook them for her. The director called Dongjung to the office. The director's eyes were extremely angry. When Dongjung entered, he knelt down and begged Dongjung to save the company. Since Dongjung and Ju Wang quit, the authors didn't want to sign contracts with the company anymore. The company was almost bankrupt. The director said that it was okay for Dongjung to not go to work because of illness, but he asked her to convince Ju Wang. Dongjung went to find Ju Wang. She asked him if he was the owner of the building. Ju Wang said it wasn't him but his father. His father had many other buildings. This one was the smallest. Ju Wang said he would open his own company. He wanted Dongjung to come work for him. As long as she got well and worked at Ju Wang's company, he would promote her to the position of department head immediately. Dongjung said she would ask for a salary so high that Ju Wang couldn't pay it. Ju Wang said that if he did, he would promote her to CEO, but Dongjung only cared about the salary, not the title. When Dongjung found out that the person in the building was Li Hunju, she went to see him. Dongjung teased Li Hunju that since he was such a good swimmer, he must be good at diving. Li Hunju asked him what he thought about diving away and breaking up with Najina. Li Hunju said that it was a despicable way to break up. Dongjung asked why people would do such a despicable thing. Li Hunju blushed and didn't know what to say. Dongjung kept emphasizing Najina's name and then left. When she returned home, Dongjung was surprised because her house was connected to Mule Man's house. After that, she happily lay on Mule Man's lap to confide in her and release her emotions. The two were intimate like a married couple. Dongjung's aunt came to see the doctor last time. but this time, Myeolmong was disguised as a doctor. The staff here told Dongjung's aunt that there was no doctor like Dongjung's aunt described. She began to have doubts. Dongjung hired a motorbike taxi driver to pretend to be a doctor to trick her. At this time, an old woman appeared. The old woman said that there were ghosts in this hospital. Many people saw the doctor as described by Dongjung's aunt. Dongjung's aunt thought that this old woman was possessed by a ghost, so she talked nonsense. The old woman said that if it wasn't a ghost, then Dongjung's aunt was tricked. Or just as Dongjung's aunt guessed, Dongjung hired a motorbike taxi driver outside the hospital to trick her aunt. Dongjung's aunt now knew that she had been tricked. Dongjung's aunt felt very sad and suddenly felt unwell. At this time, Dongjung and Myeolmong were on the rooftop. She said that if she could be born again, she wanted to become the moon. She asked Myeolmong what he wanted to do if time could be turned back. He said that he still wanted to meet Dongjung and loved her. Dongjung took out crystal ball that Son Yo-shin gave her last time. She gave it back to Myeolmong. At this time, Dongjung received a phone call from the Tat hospital. They said that her aunt was in a coma. She rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, Dongjung's aunt only had a stomachache. The aunt wanted to hear Dongjung's explanation about the doctor. Dongjung didn't know what to say. The aunt told Dongjung to quickly go to the hospital. Dongjung said that whether she went to the hospital or had surgery, she wouldn't be able to live. Dongjung's aunt was devastated, so she sent Dongjung home. When she left the hospital, Dongjung met Son Yo-shin. Dongjung asked Son Yo-shin for help. Dongjung didn't know what to do now. Son Yo-shin said she would help Dongjung. Although Son Yo-shin couldn't help her live, Son Yo-shin could change the fate of Myeolmong and Dongjung. Son Yo-shin would separate the two of them from each other's fate, as if nothing had happened in the first place. That way, Dongjung wouldn't remember anything related to Myeolmong. Dongjung would leave as her fate had been. This will prevent the world from being destroyed and Dongjung's loved ones from dying. As everyone predicted, Dongjung decided to change their fates. Now, the two no longer know each other. Everything has returned to the way it was. Myeolmong continues to do his job. He destroys those who dare to invade his territory of destroying people. The film opens with a man trying to burn a building. When this guy throws out a lighter, Myeolmong appears, scaring him. Myeolmong pours gasoline on this guy. Myeolmong puts a cigarette in his mouth and says, "Let me give him some fire." Myeolmong hates the most the kind of people who cause chaos in his area. Destruction is his right, trying to steal his job. First is the cat, then arson. Next is definitely children, the elderly, pregnant women. He has these criminals in the palm of his hand. After Dongjung chose to change her fate, her life returned to normal. She went to the hospital to complete the admission procedures. Myeolmong went to see Son Yo-shin. He thought that the humans that Son Yo-shin loved were becoming more and more disgusting. Myeolmong felt that Son Yo-shin had sacrificed too much for humanity, to the point that she fell ill and had to be bedridden like this. When Myeolmong turned to leave, Son Yo-shin apologized to Myeolmong. Myeolmong coldly strode out. Outside the hospital, Myeolmong bumped into Dongjung again. Dongjung saw Myeolmong. She felt very familiar. Myeolmong said he knew he was handsome, but he was busy. After Myeolmong left for a while, he felt that this girl looked very familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. The next day, Na took Dongjung to the hospital. The two cleaned the room. When they went out, they heard another rumor from the old lady that the hospital was haunted. Dongjung dropped the red bracelet. She heard the car horn. When the destroyer was killing this person, Myeolmong discovered that Dongjung was here. Dongjung pretended not to see anything. The two then sat down and talked. Dongjung brought coffee for Myeolmong. Myeolmong said he didn't eat or drink. Dongjung thought the destroyer was a ghost, so he touched it to confirm. Dongjung didn't understand why ghosts were so handsome. Myeolmong read Dongjung's mind. He asked her if she had ever met him. She said she had met him at the hospital last time and he had helped her. Myeolmong didn't expect Dongjung to be able to see his true face. Myeolmong told Dongjung that she was about to die. No matter what she did, Dongjung's fate was to die. Dongjung was silent for 5 seconds. Myeolmong left coldly. Dongjung wondered why there were such bad guys. The person who was being chased by Myeolmong thought he had escaped, so he suddenly fainted. When he woke up, he was locked in a barrel. Myeolmong wanted this guy to experience the feeling of being locked up like he did to his son. This guy repented. He asked Myeolmong to forgive him. Myeolmong coldly left. Then he didn't know what happened. He went to see Son Yo-shin. He felt strange because someone recognized him. Myeolmong was playing happily when he was caught by a strange person. Myeolmong said that person would die next month anyway. He looked at the flower pot and asked Son Yo-shin what it was. That flower was about to wither. Son So-shin said that the flower in the pot symbolized Myeolmong's existence. That night, Dongjung went to the rooftop to look at the city. She and Myeolmong met each other again. He said Dongjung was affecting him. If she wanted to die, she should go die somewhere else. She said this terrace belongs to everyone, not him. Myeolmong replied that this rooftop was his, so Dongjung should go die somewhere else. She was annoyed that Myeolmong kept bothering her. Dongjung said that now she just wanted wanted the world to be destroyed. Milmang began to enjoy Dongjung's words. He approached Dongjung. He felt satisfied with her. He thought Dongjung also had potential. Dongjung began to feel afraid of Milmang. When she got into the elevator, Milmang followed her. She thought Milmang was following her. Milmang said she wasn't following her. He told Dongjung that she was about to suffer a headache. At this time, Dongjung began to feel a terrible headache. She collapsed. The pain felt like a hammer hitting her head. She begged Milmang to help her. Milmang asked what she would do for him if he helped her. While holding Milmang's hand, Dongjung gradually regained consciousness. He asked Dongjung to wish for him to destroy the world. He asked Dongjung if she didn't feel it was unfair. A gentle person like her had to die, while the bad guys out there lived for a long time. She told Milmang that even if she wished, would he be able to fulfill her wish? He wanted Dongjung to explain about the bracelet, because when he held her hand, she was safe and sounded like this. Dongjung thought it was just a coincidence. Milmang found the girl in front of her difficult to convince, so Milmang used his talent. When the elevator opened, Dongjung's eyes were a vast beach. Dongjung was surprised. She asked why he could do it. He saw that Dongjung wanted to come to this place in her mind, so he brought her here. So who was he? He wasn't a ghost, nor a human. That's right, because he was a destroyer. He wanted Dong to wish that the earth would be destroyed, and he would help Dongjung escape the pain until he died. He will hold her hand. If Dongjung agrees, then give him your hand. The two will sign the contract. Dongjung doesn't want to. She says if her head doesn't hurt, she will hurt somewhere else. She feels tempted for a moment. She looks at Milmang. Milmang looks into Dongjung's eyes. He feels very familiar. He gently strokes her hair. When she gets home, she still can't forget that feeling. Dongjung doesn't understand why her tears keep flowing. The corners of Milmang's eyes are also red. The first tears in his life also appear. He goes to find Sun Yoshin to ask, but it seems like he already knows that Sun Yoshin did something to him. Sun Yoshin says it wasn't him, but Dongjung. Milmang angrily leaves. Sun Yoshin says that a tree suddenly came back to life. Only then does she realize that there are things that cannot be changed. Dongjung remembers the name she gave Milmang. She took out her phone, checked Milmang's name and tried calling. At this moment, the elevator suddenly opened and Milmang's phone rang. Dongjung asked Milmang how he knew her name and who he was. The two stood there looking at each other for half a day. At this time, Dongjung's aunt was looking for her. Dongjung hurriedly pulled Milmang into the elevator. Dongjung wondered if Milmang came to find her because he missed her so much. When she got to the parking lot, Dongjung said that at that moment, she suddenly found herself crying. She herself didn't know that she was crying. The two went to a nearby cafe. Milmang asked Dongjung if she had ever seen a short-haired girl in the hospital. Dongjung wondered if it was that girl. Dongjung said he had seen such a girl. Milmang asked if she had done anything to Dongjung. Dongjung said that she had opened the bottle cap for the girl. The girl thanked him and told Dongjung to go to the rooftop to look at the city. Dongjung asked Milmang if he was crying at that time. Milmang was speechless, so he changed the subject. He asked Dongjung who she called in the elevator. Dongjung said that when she was crying, she had a strange thought in her head. She had to call someone, but she didn't know who that person was. The phone number was also saved in her phone. When she went out, Dongjung kept asking herself about the name Milmang. Then she accidentally tripped and fell on Milmang. He asked why. Dongjung kept tripping like that. Then he coldly left. Dongjung thought this guy had a mental problem. Why did he keep following her? When he got home, Milmang discovered that his phone had a missed call from Dongjung. When he unlocked the screen, he saw a photo of him and her together. Milmang went to see Sun Yoshin. He showed Sun Yoshin the photo of him and Dongjung. He asked Sun Yoshin what his relationship with Dongjung was. Sun Yoshin couldn't answer. If Sun Yoshin didn't say anything, Milmang would go find out for herself. Milmang told Sun Yoshin that no matter what happened, she shouldn't blame him. Meanwhile, Dongjung was looking at the exorcism real estate. Milmang transformed into a doctor and came to find Dongjung. Dongjung was surprised. She didn't understand what was going on. She asked Milmang why she was here. Her aunt apologized to Milmang on her behalf for being a bit rude. Milmang said it was okay. When a person's body is not well, it can easily lead to unstable nerves. It's normal for a patient to be uncomfortable like that. After that, Milmang took Dongjung for a full body checkup. She asked him what he did for a living. Milmang said he came to save her. After that, he took out Dongjung's phone. When he looked at Dongjung's pictures, Milmang realized something. Everyone in the company then visited Dongjung. They all chatted happily. Juwang told Dongjung that if he needed money urgently, he could just tell him. Everyone had never seen someone as cold as Juwang suddenly become so cool before. Najina also visited Dongjung. When Najina saw Juwang, she turned around and left. Juwang saw this and chased after Najina. Najina said that tonight she would go drinking with Lee Hyunju to relieve her stress. Juwang coldly said then go ahead and drink. Najina was surprised. She asked why he didn't stop her since it was obvious that he liked her. Najina asked again, what if she got drunk and did something she shouldn't have? Juwang said then go ahead and do it. but Ju Wang's feelings for Najina remained the same. Najina asked when Ju Wang started liking her. Ju Wang said that he liked her from the first time they met. Najina thought that Ju Wang's decision to love her was a foolish one. Ju Wang said that the one who misses out is the fool. Najina was a little moved. The doctor advised Dongjung to shave her head because she has cancer now. Her hair will gradually fall out. If she shaves her hair now, she will feel better. Dongjung then went to the barbershop. She asked the barber to give her a celebrity hairstyle. The barbershop owner said that she had seen people wearing hospital gowns come here to shave their heads. The barbershop owner praised Dongjung for her beautiful hairstyle, and she even asked to take a picture. After taking the picture, it was time for Dongjung to shave her head. The barbershop owner was surprised by Dongjung's words. Dongjung said that she just wanted to try it one last time. The barbershop owner was about to cut it when Dongjung's nose started bleeding. When Dongjung stood up, she fell. Miel Mang supported Dongjung. The two of them looked at each other passionately. When Dongjung woke up, it seemed like she was dead. In the funeral room, her portrait was hung up. Miel Mang was sitting there crying. Dongjung told him not to cry, but now Dongjung was just a spirit standing in front of Miel Mang. It turned out to be a dream. When Dongjung woke up, she saw Miel Mang in front of her. Dongjung touched his cheek. Dongjung apologized to him. When she went out into the hallway, Miel Mang gradually remembered his memories with Dongjung, but he still couldn't be sure it was Dongjung. Miel Mang went to see Sun Yoshin. Sun Yoshin had disappeared when Dongjung woke up. Dongjung discovered that she was in Miel Mang's house. She thought she was kidnapped. Dongjung ran around Miel Mang's house looking for a way out, but every door she opened led to Miel Mang. Dongjung asked Miel Mang if she had just dreamed. She dreamed of him sitting and crying in front of her portrait. Miel Mang said he didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't cry, wasn't sad. He approached Dongjung. Miel Mang told her to try smiling for him. Dongjung wondered why she had to do that. Miel Mang wanted her to do that so he would know who she was. After Dongjung smiled, he still couldn't recognize who she was. Then, he led Dongjung into his world, surrounded by withered flowers and trees. He told Dongjung to try to remember if she had ever been here before. Dongjung reminded Miel Mang that he only needed to remember good things in the future. Then, this place would become better. After Dongjung smiled, her memories gradually appeared in his mind. To confirm, he approached and kissed her. Everything was now clear. Dongjung also gradually remembered. She remembered when she talked to Sun Yoshin. She chose to change her fate. When she woke up, she was in the hospital. At this moment, Dongjung remembered all her memories with Miel Mang. She opened the diary. The words she wrote about Miel Mang suddenly appeared. In Miel Mang's world, the flowers and trees suddenly turned green again. The memories of him being with Dongjung also came flooding back. Miel Mang came to find Dongjung, but he found that she had left. At this time, Dongjung had returned home. Miel Mang called her. When she returned, Miel Mang was standing in front of Dongjung. The two couldn't hold back their tears. Dongjung blamed Miel Mang for not recognizing her. Even though she had chosen that way, when he saw her, he should have recognized her. Miel Mang blamed her for always doing things her own way. The two hugged each other. It seemed that fate couldn't defeat power of love. Will the two of them have to overcome the next challenge? After that, the two of them returned to the hotel together. In order for the two of them not to feel regret, Miel Mang proposed to marry her. This sentence surprised everyone. When they had to part, the two felt something called grief. The next day, she suggested to the doctor to give up examination and treatment. She knew her fate could no longer be saved. To comfort Dongjung, Miel Mang wore a patient's gown, and he lay in the bed next to her. He took out the bank card that Tak Sun Jung had asked to give her, which was the wedding gift money that Tak Sun Jung had prepared for his sister. But even so, he still could not comfort Dongjung, who was collapsing. She went to hug Miel Mang. To cherish the last time, the two decided to move in together. The day she was discharged from the hospital, Sun Yoshin appeared again. Everything was beyond Sun Yoshin's control. She hoped that Dongjung could accept her fate and accept Miel Mang. Sun Yoshin hoped that Dongjung would continue to live happily because this was Miel Mang's wish, and this was the best ending for the two of them. In the evening, Miel Mang bought a bouquet of roses from the old lady on the stairs and brought them to Dongjung. Although Dongjung was still sad, she still attentively arranged the flowers in a vase. The two of them ate together, walked, read books, and hugged each other to sleep. They did all the things that other couples usually do. Until the time started counting down, Dongjung began to fear more and more that she would disappear. She tried to fight off her sleepiness, but in the end, she still held Miel Mang's hand and fell asleep. When Dongjung woke up, her side was empty. Dongjung went crazy. She ran out to look for her until she saw Miel Mang appear in front of the house. She burst into tears, saying that she couldn't bear to leave him. She was very afraid of losing him. Miel Mang saw her lover like that and quickly hugged her. He gently comforted her that they still had time. It turned out that while she was sleeping, he had come to say goodbye to Sun Yoshin for the last time. After calming down, Dongjung suggested that she wanted to live in Miel Mang's world and spend her last day with him. The two of them just looked at the world like that. Miel Mang felt felt that he had not lived before. He had simply existed. Dongjun was the one who brought him light. Afterwards, the two went to the church to pray for the last time. Dongjun hoped that when her life ended, she would not love anyone. Milmang hoped that she could live happily. The clock slowly pointed to 12 o'clock at night. Dongjun was scared and shed tears. Milmang did not know what to do. He could only comfort her continuously. At the last moment of life and death, Dongjun kept her eyes open. She watched the person she loved slowly disappear like sea foam in front of her. She painfully collapsed to the ground and cried miserably. After Milmang disappeared, Dongjung's condition slowly improved. 3 months later, the tumor in her brain had almost disappeared. This surprised the doctors. They could only explain it with 2 words: miracle. Dongjun laughed. She replied that she was lucky. When she left the hospital, she accidentally walked past the room where she and Milmang used to stay. This made her nostalgic for someone she could never see again. A moment later, Dongjun's best friend came to pick her up from the hospital. On the way back, she received an invitation to meet Ju Wang. It turned out that he wanted to start a business, so Ju Wang invited her to take on the position of new editor-in-chief. This ignited her will to return to writing. After leaving Ju Wang's house, Dongjun once again passed the intersection where she had met Milmang. While Dongjun was thinking about her lover, suddenly someone came and grabbed her hand. Dongjun was both surprised and happy, but when Dongjun turned around, she saw that person was her younger brother. Dongjun disappointedly pushed her younger brother's hand away. The two of them went home together. Dongjun told her family about her intention to go to work. Although everyone was still worried about Dongjun's health, they couldn't stop her. The next morning, when Dongjun was preparing to open the door to go to work, she saw Milmang sitting on the sofa greeting her. Dongjun was surprised and ran to hug him. She couldn't hold back her tears of happiness. But reality is sometimes cruel. It was all just her dream. After Dongjun woke up, she immediately went to work. Dongjun went to work seriously. She was strict with herself. Sometimes Dongjun even bought herself roses and replaced the bouquet Milmang gave her. Dongjun also wrote her love story with him into a series. Dongjun posted it online. Life went on like that. Her relatives hadn't seen her lover for a long time, so everyone was curious and asked her about Milmang. Dongjun really didn't know how to answer, so she could only lie that the other party had changed his mind. Everyone's question was also what was on her mind. Dongjun went to Milmang's house alone, and she even texted him about everyone's concerns. Then a beep sounded, and Dongjun accidentally saw Milmang's phone on the sofa. There were still messages on the phone screen that she hadn't sent to her yet. Dongjun missed him so much that she wanted to cry, but she still tried to hold back. She quietly walked to the bed and lay down. She remembered the time when the two of them looked at each other. After calming down, Dongjun returned home. On the way, she encountered heavy rain, but without Milmang by her side, she had to learn to take care of herself. As soon as she got off the bus, she saw Sanyo Shin waiting for her at the bus stop. The two of them talked for a few sentences. Dongjun gave Sanyo Shin an umbrella, and she walked home in the rain. Sanyo Shin holds Dongjun's umbrella. Sanyo Shin returns to the flower garden to meet Milmang. At this time, Milmang is in the flower garden. The two confide in Dongjun about her recent situation. Sanyo Shin shows Milmang her flower seed, which has sprouted and bloomed. This flower was obtained thanks to Milmang sacrificing herself. Sanyo Shin says that Milmang can use her human identity to return to Dongjun. The two can live happily together. After knowing all of Sanyo Shin's arrangements, Milmang hurriedly takes her umbrella and runs to find Dongjun. Finally, Milmang manages to grab Dongjun's hand when the car brakes suddenly. Dongjun is extremely surprised to see the person in her heart return from the dead. How could the person next to her be so real? Dongjun can't believe that Milmang has returned to her. She rushes to hug Milmang. The umbrella in her hand fell, and the two of them hugged each other tightly in the rain. When they arrived at Dongjun's house, Milmang told Dongjun the whole story of his return. He said that it was all arranged by Sanyo Shin. He also told her that he had become human. He could eat and sleep like a real human. But what made him happiest was meeting Dongjun again. Tonight, the two of them could finally sleep peacefully looking at each other. When she woke up in the morning, she opened her eyes and didn't see Milmang. She panicked and ran to look for him, but saw Milmang brushing her teeth. Seeing her lover still alive in front of her, she rushed to hug him and cried. Then she took him to work with her. The two of them went to see Tak Sun-jung together. On the way, Dongjun was afraid that Tak Sun-jung wouldn't recognize Milmang. Unexpectedly, as soon as she got out of the car, Tak Sun-jung ran to hug Milmang, and even the image in the photo of the three of them had changed. It turned out that Sanyo Shin had secretly helped them. After that, the two walked hand in hand. They went to Dongjun's aunt's new house together. Everyone happily held a party together. Because Milmang had become a human, he had to go to work to make a living. Milmang chose to work in the hospital because he really liked helping others. Now that the stormy days had passed, the two of them stood by the riverside once again to admire the scenery. Dongjun said that it had been so long but she still couldn't forget Mong's face. Now that he was by her side, she was no longer lonely. Mong also took the opportunity to confess to her. Everyone in the family gathered together to make kimchi. While talking, Dongjung accidentally said that she was in love with the neighbor. This made her aunt shake her head because of genetics. Dongjung's uncle wanted to show his agreement with Mong, so he specially talked to Mang privately and encouraged her. The uncle hoped that after Mong married Dongjung, he could become the pillar of the family. After eating, because Dongjung wanted to stay at his aunt's house, Mong could only go home alone. As soon as he got home, he brushed his teeth and went to bed as Dongjung had instructed. Mong called Dongjo, just as she was also writing their story into a novel. But halfway through writing, she ran out of ideas. The couple discussed the plot together on the phone. Unexpectedly, Mang fell asleep while talking. Later, Dongjung met Sanyo Shin in a dream. Sanyo Shin showed Dongjung the pot of flowers that had bloomed. Sanyo Shin also told Dongjung that Sanyo Shin had always stood at the starting point and hoped that people would always keep a smile on their lips. Above is the entire content of the movie. Thank you everyone for your attention. Goodbye and see you again.